back to the kick-off. We got Joey, we got Marvin, we got Josh. How are you doing, lads? All right?
Good. Very good.
We've just watched Manchester City come back from 1-1 to win so predictably in the 88th minute. Josh, you called it. It was almost miserable because I was getting a bit excited, like maybe something different. Maybe, just maybe, we'll see City have a stumble, but no.
Roger just bangs it in and just breaks our hearts, doesn't he,
but even then, with this golden opportunity that we're watching replayed right now, 3 yards out, reminiscent of fucking Casemiro yesterday.
Yeah.
And I'm just frustrated, mate.
I just don't want it to be, I don't want to be the Premier League to be a Farmers League. I'm really sick of it. And if Man City just keep dominating, it's going to be a really worrying path.
Imagine how great this league would be, right? Just imagine if Man City didn't exist. Imagine how unpredictable we'd all be sat here going, any one of us could be Premier League champions this season.
No, it would be Arsenal.
I knew that was coming.
I hear that Arsenal would be favourites, right? But I just mean, like, it wouldn't just feel like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, it'd be less confidence, but I still feel like Arsenal would dominate in the exact same way that Man City currently dominate, because we're just more organised.
Yeah, I get it right now, but you've only had one season of showing that. Yeah. It's not like it wouldn't be, I'd have a lot of hope. I have no hope for that.
If you take Man City out of the equation, over the last 10 seasons, you've got 6 teams maybe that have won the league.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you haven't got Man City there. And do you know what? If Man City weren't there, another team would come to fruition and probably be dominant.
What I will say is, against Newcastle, they weren't amazing. I thought they underperformed. And luckily for them, so did we, I think, in that game. But in today, when I'm looking for like that penetration where they have all of that fucking possession, you know, Phil Foden's not starting even after having one of the best games I've seen an opposition player have against us in the last few years. I'm like, what does this kid need to do to just get 2 games in a row, like? And then, you know, without De Bruyne, obviously he's injured, then Mahrez, Gundogan are no longer there. Like, they don't look as much of a team that will grill the opposition and whittle them down to an inevitable goal. Like, I mean, they turned it on when it went 1-1, but it wasn't like they were doing constant chance creation.
I have to say, though, to counter that, you look at the stats, 80% possession. They had 30 shots.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, 9 on target.
Yeah.
So if you
9 on target speaks volumes, though.
Yeah.
Like 1 in 3. Like, for me, when they had what I class as a bit of a higher level of player in the team, for any of the 4 players I mentioned there, that stat of on target would be way higher. Like, a lot of them were quite speculative.
Yeah.
I think they've started quite slowly for their standards, but then if you look at it from the other side of things, you could go, right, if there's ever a time to get at Man City, history would suggest it's normally early on in the season.
This is why I was so annoyed after the Newcastle game.
If you can try and get them early on in the season, that's your best chance. Yeah, I know they'll pick up losses every now and again, but early on, history would suggest that's where you get them. If you look at this right now and you go, do you know what? We're seeing the same. They're starting not poorly, but by their standards, not as quick as they can be, but they're still getting 3 points when they're doing that. And that makes you think, do you know what? There's whatever chance you give them, as soon as they start getting the ball rolling and everyone starts getting form, then you're definitely not going to take any points off them.
To your point, bro, I'm looking at Erling Haaland, I'm going, missed 4 good opportunities against Newcastle, missed a penalty today. It's not really at his best. 3 goals in 3 games. Yeah. Do you know, like, that's really the story of, are they at their best right now? No. Are they still fucking fantastic? Yes.
Well, I think what they learned last time is just how to be really efficient. And I think at the end of the season, they weren't even spectacular. They were just hella efficient. And they had learned how to balance their team out, get the ball to Haaland without it being so cookie cutter and obvious. And their defence was amazing.
Can we talk about the Foden situation, though? Because I watched Foden, I was in awe of him against Newcastle. I was like, now that Mahrez is out the way, now that a few of these other players out there, and De Bruyne is injured, surely Foden, week in, week out, starting, and you're going to give them that push that he's been holding him back a little bit. And, like, kind of you're thinking as a young footballer, you don't want another Wayne Rooney situation where he's shot before, you know, time, because Rooney, for me, aged earlier than he should have done. And I thought maybe he was, but like today, I've got him in my fantasy league team. I'm pissed. What the fuck is going on? So why do we think he holds Foden back now when Foden clearly is ready? And no one else is clearly better than Foden.
I don't get it at all. I would be starting Foden week in, week out. And when you see him and what he does on the football pitch, what he did against Newcastle, even in the first game, was the first game where he did that unbelievable touch, like brought it with him. You just see that and you're just thinking like, I'm thinking like quality of like Gaza, that sort of like mercurial talent. And obviously, let's not go too far on Gaza, but I think he's that level of player.
He really is. He really is that good.
Yeah.
That's how mental it is.
And this is the thing with Pep, and obviously Pep's not there today. It's his assistant manager. Pep's got in for surgery, and obviously, but he's picking the team sheet, isn't he? And you just sat there thinking, and I do this week in, week out, and obviously we're both fancy players, and this is why it's difficult putting Man City player teams in there. You just never know what Pep is going to do. And actually, like, it makes me think, is it a concerted plan that Pep does where he's like, do you know what, I'm actually just going to chuck a surprise in there and I'm going to make sure all of the players are like on the top form they possibly can, because if they're not and they're not doing exactly what I say to them, they're going to be gone. And also the other managers are not going to know, oh God, well, I'm prepping for Foden to be on that right hand side, I'm sure he's going to be playing, and then Pep just goes, oh no, I'll just play someone else.
If we're talking about competition for places, then like, okay, you have a dip in form, someone else comes in. Take Newcastle today, for example. If Isak drops off, Wilson will start. But Foden had as good a game as humanly possible against Newcastle. So that's why I was like, surely starting this week. So I don't know if it's a psychological thing where he thinks, I've got to keep this kid on his toes. I never want him to get above his station. I always want him to be trying to prove me wrong. And we've heard of managers like Benitez used to do this to Steven Gerrard. Like, just when Gerrard thought, I'm going to get a big compliment today, he'd say, here's what you did wrong, here's what you did wrong. And it demands more.
There was a story where like Foden, I think Pep was challenging Foden to speak up more for himself. And then apparently he yelled at him for making a mistake on the pitch. And then Foden waited for him out after the game and said, look, Pep, you wouldn't do that with anybody else. And he was like, oh, finally, you're sticking up for yourself. So I don't think it's a thing about his attitude. I personally feel like he manages players every year. He manages someone in a way that we never understand, and I think he's challenging him to step it up a notch, because he's been good for 3-4 years. He's won a whole bunch, he's contributed in games, but I think Pep is like, you could be the best midfielder in the world, and if you're going to take the place of De Bruyne, I need even more. And if you don't get the even more, I don't even care if you'll come up and do good. If you don't get the levels you're going to go to, I'm going to keep you out until you get it. I think it's such a psychology. And again, Thierry Henry's spoken about that as well, about like taking him off if he's like out of position. And even though he scored, I don't care. You're not in the position you're meant to be, so you're on the bench next game. Like, he's very, very harsh. But I think he's challenging players to want it. So only the best get it.
It must be frustrating for Foden though, knowing like Kevin De Bruyne is finally injured. I get to play through the middle now, steal the show. And then I'm back on.
Do you know what the concerning thing as well about this Foden thing is? Normally, when you see Pep Guardiola want to refine a player, yeah, and almost box him in and get exactly his mould of what he wants out of that player, you normally see it when Pep has first come into a team or when the players first come into the team. These lot have been working together for 3-4 seasons, right. And now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, you're not my guy.
But don't you think Foden has a chance of being the best English midfielder of all time? So based on his age, and if he did the level we did for another 10 years, we're talking about him, because he'll win more than Gerrard, he'll score more goals than Gerrard, he'll outperform and outshine many of the stats of everybody else, maybe shy of Lampard. And then you just think like, but he's got to want it. He's got to see himself as the best player in the world. The fact that Saka has overtaken him in terms of reputation in the league, that he should be furious about that. Is that not because Saka has the trust of his manager, and part of that is that's what you need, right? Like, and look, far be it from me to question Pep Guardiola, for Christ's sake, but I'm trying to understand the logic, because you've seen Iniesta, you've seen Lionel Messi, you've watched these great players, become the best that they can be, and I'm trying to work out, what are you looking for in this lad? Because everything's there. So the thing about Saka is, every year he's graduated to a bit more responsibility. So it went from it's like penalties and free kicks and corners, and it's like you're doing long range shots from the edge of your box, you're winning games on your own, and it's like, I feel like the smart thing for Pep and for Arteta at this stage is to look at him this year. If he feels he isn't cutting it, who's going to come in to be like, take a seat, because you can go even higher. Like, I think, and I appreciate Ronaldo is an anomaly in many ways, but there was a year when Ronaldo went from step overs, flippy flapping, all this sexy stuff, and then he just turned into a machine. Just like there was minimal amount of effort to score and assist the goals that he needed to do, and you're like, actually, you are a problem from all angles. And I think Saka has a ceiling to reach, not that level, but reach that outcome in our team, be that guy. And I feel like for Foden, he also does, but it's a mental thing. You've got to actually see yourself as that person and dedicate yourself in that way. And I feel like Foden probably isn't doing it outside of it. And I've seen there's little things that happen that I just think the best player in the world, you don't want to hear that stuff. I don't want to see videos of you arguing with your missus on the beach. I just don't. I feel like those are the kind of things that I think means you're not 100% in it. And as petty as it sounds, we never heard those passes from any of the top players. I have no idea what goes on in Messi's personal life. I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
Do you not
It's very difficult to challenge though when you're not playing enough. Like Foden would come back to Pep and say, "Look, if you put me on the pitch, I'll go and express myself, and I'll prove to you why I reckon myself to be one of the best English players out there." And if Pep isn't playing him, like let's get this straight, guys. Foden would get in every other team in the Premier League.
In the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd get in Arsenal's team, he'd get in Chelsea's team. So if that's the case, do we not need to think about whether it would actually be beneficial for Foden to move on and leave City? He's 23 years old.
was rumours
it's not
of
like
it.
he's a 19-year-old kid anymore. Like he's an experienced player that would be playing in every other team.
Where on earth would he go? Like honestly, I don't know where he would go. I feel like any of the top English teams, but Man City would be insane to let him go any of those. Although Arsenal would love you to come and hang out anytime you want to come.
You wouldn't put it past them. And look, I'm not for 1 second suggesting it's a good idea for Man City to let Phil Foden go, or that it's a good idea for Phil Foden to walk away from Pep Guardiola and the treble and all of that. I'm not. But we've seen Pep. If someone's complaining that they're not getting enough first team football,
They're gone.
like Leroy Sané. All right then,
Sterling,
get yourself away.
all of them.
It's happened.
Is there any chance here that Pep could be making a massive mistake? Because I think that we look at the accolades of Pep and we look at what he's done in the game and we look at the examples of when he has done this sort of thing with players. Yeah, Grealish came in, didn't play all that much. Next season, absolutely as a barnstormer. So we would just assume, okay, Pep's going to do this thing, he moulds him, and then all of a sudden Foden becomes one of the most important players in that team. What about from the other side? Because no manager is above making mistakes. What if he does, actually prove detrimental to Foden's career by doing this?
I do feel like managers make mistakes on that level. Obviously, like Alex Ferguson and Jaap Stan, he's widely said that that's one of my biggest mistakes of letting him go. Ruud van Nistelrooy, another one. But also, it's like he carries on winning afterwards. So I think he would regret it to himself. I don't think it would impact Man City to a level that they won't win stuff now because Foden's not there. It would more just be that his career continues at a really high level afterwards. And I think that's, again, like we looked at Zinchenko and Jesus and being like, oh, we should have let them go. But really, even right now, if we have Timber, I don't even know if both of those players are our best option in our front line. It's like that switch of when your levels go up a level, you start looking at the players that you have and you think, I don't know if you can take us to the place we're actually going. You helped us get out of the top 4, top 6 race, but now we want to win things. Can we rely on those players? Or can we rely on all the players that he's let go? I just think he understands what it takes. And I think, like, looking at Foden, if he's not doing the things, there's a point where you're like, I have to find someone who's going to do it. Because really, I think mentality at that level does more than just pure talent.
Just to be clear, we're not the only ones, because I just Googled Phil Foden to see how old he is. He's 23, just turned. So he's coming into that age where I want to start every week, you know what I mean? And it will be harder for him to just handle this. But there's a whole article about how Man City fans were stunned that Phil Foden didn't start.
And also the chat is saying, and rightly so, apparently that he was unwell in the week and therefore like he's not been.
Well then.
But then
we're talking load of shit.
No. But then also like if he's unwell, he's on the bench and comes on and makes difference in the like he gets the assist for the final goal. So he's either unwell or he's well enough to play. So it's still, I think the point still remains. And also like as I say, if I'm Foden, I want to be pushing on with the next step of my career and I want to be playing week in, week out, representing the biggest teams. So.
We're going to move on to some news about two of the players in today's game, Newcastle versus Liverpool. I've got a bit of fear.
Can we talk a little bit before we go into this game in particular about what this game means to you? Because it's become quite a bit of a rivalry, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's well, it was back in the day because of obviously those 4-3s. We shared quite a lot of footballers. Kenny Dalglish then became Newcastle manager, ruined everything Kevin Keegan had done. And I've got like vivid memories, but like it's been a long time since I went into a Newcastle Liverpool game thinking we should win today. And this is the first time I thought, if we don't win today, I'm disappointed. And it's not because I don't respect Liverpool. Liverpool are amazing. But Liverpool are, in my opinion, not as strong as they've been for about 6, 7 years under Klopp now. I think that they are gettable. And I've watched how they defended this season, and sometimes it's been a bit fucking kamikaze. And despite Newcastle losing to City, I just think overall we're a really well-balanced side, and hopefully we can get at them today. And not just that, like the rivalry in the games, because they're a really fierce team, and we're a fierce team, and we play similar ideas of football. I think there's a clash there, and I think Klopp also hates boxing against someone with equal punching power to him. Like, he hates our style of Eddie Howe, I think, has taken a lot of inspiration from Jurgen Klopp's running style to outrun your opponent, to make technique count less and to make who wants it more count more. And if you look at the way we've built up our team with Trippier as a fullback and now bringing in other pacey fullbacks, like he's definitely taken a lot of inspiration. But I've seen a lot of combined 11s this week, and it was the first time where it was even in 15 year, 20 year.
I actually think that the fact that you dropped points against City and obviously had a bit of a lesser performance in comparison to what you've been used to recently is going to be a positive. I look at most times that I saw Newcastle take a loss last season, the one thing that I was always seeing was they were coming back and showing character in the following game. So I think that the main thing that I would associate with this Newcastle team at the moment is character, mentality, a strong-mindedness from the players that maybe in seasons gone by wasn't there. And for those reasons, I'd be shocked if you don't see a good performance from Newcastle today.
Yeah, and I just want to win as well, because Klopp did a double over us last season, really rubbed it in. And I've actually taken a lot of stick from Liverpool fans in the last week, because I did that bit about Klopp being a whingy little bastard these days. And it's funny because whenever anyone can't attack the argument, they attack you personally, and I got a shitload of that. And no one questioning a single point we made around the table about Klopp's talent ID being questionable, about the fact that now Klopp's not at the big table with Pep anymore, that he's becoming more grumpy and more whingy, just like Jose Mourinho did. A lot of the things were evidence-based that we were coming out with. But apparently I'm just a big fat Geordie bastard. Thanks very much. I would love it if we beat them today. And one of the biggest talking points of the match is that the rumour is that this could be Mo Salah's last game at Liverpool. Now, they're really wanting to keep a hold of him, but from everything I understand of people who worked at Newcastle, as soon as those Saudi owners took over, they wanted Mo Salah for Newcastle because of what he represents in that part of the world, and he is an iconic Muslim footballer. And I think it's inevitable he will end up in the Saudi league. And also, like, he's 31 now, and I think he's probably looking at this Liverpool squad himself going, am I going to win another title with this lot? I doubt it. He's not winning a Champions League or Premier League with Liverpool again. So what's left to do, And I think if not now, then at the end of the season, it's inevitable Mo Salah will play for a Saudi owned football team. It's just going to happen. But if it is now, what does that mean for Liverpool? I mean, they're going to get 100 plus million.
It doesn't matter how much money they get. Look, to replace Mo Salah in any form of... the problem is so many teams have money. Like, we're not even acknowledging that Tottenham have 100 million just sitting with no real plan against it. And the idea of buying those players, anyone in the top 8 have enough money to be like, no. They can probably say, I want to go get Matoma and try and move things around. But in reality, it's like, why would he go there? For me, I don't feel like he has a massive desire to go there. They don't even look like they're on the up. They look a little bit confused. I think the midfield rebuild will prove to be a massive flop. I think the fact that they've gone into Endo was really disappointing. That's what you went from Caicedo to Endo in 10 days. That should be a massive red flag for me. And I think McAllister and Szoboszlai is not good enough. It's not enough for what they needed, and they got nothing underneath. So I think they're in real trouble because it's really hard to rebuild in this era with everyone spending money, literally everybody.
The one thing that this smacks of to me is, well, Liverpool have been rebuilding their front three, but you have to do it in advance of, while you're still a power club. Like, that's what Sir Alex Ferguson did so well, is like he always bought in advance of, so that they were still in pole position when trying to attract those players. You don't wait until you drop from first to fifth to then go, can we have your best player now? Like, because then where's the pull is not as powerful as it was, right? But maybe if they are going to try and rebuild that midfield three more and get more back up there, they should be able to, by now, have confidence in Luis Diaz, Gakpo, and Darwin Núñez
or Jota.
Or Jota, yeah. That's what they've been building them for. It's time to take over. And if it's not time to take over now, then it will have to be at the end of the summer.
But I think
at the end of the season, and they're still not playing Darwin Núñez. He doesn't get a game.
I think it's unfortunate where Jota gets injured, Diaz gets injured, and then Núñez not necessarily starting off in a way that was hugely impactful, and even did really Gakpo as well. So it's a lot of like almost. To be honest, I don't feel like when they sign any of those players that I feel like that's a direct replacement for Mane that's going to make sense. I felt like when they added Diaz to it, it felt like they had a good squad options and he looked really dangerous. He wasn't a replacement though for Mane. It's not on the levels. And I think they'll struggle to find a replacement for Mane if he does go. And I can see them holding on to money thinking that we'll wait until another window rather than try to splurge last minute and make it happen. I just don't see them doing it.
Question for the table then. Is this some sort of end of an era? If Mo Salah goes, are we like, you know what, the days of Liverpool winning titles, it's officially over?
I don't think necessarily it is. I think when you look at the main worry here is your prominent player is going. So some people might argue that Salah's not now the highest performing player in that team. Numbers would probably say he is, but some people would say, okay, he's starting to slide off. When the prominent name goes, it's always going to be scary. But again, you look at history, Liverpool, Coutinho went. They went on to bigger and better things, Even when Ronaldo originally left Man United, that wasn't the end. It was coming towards it, but it wasn't the end of them competing. Hazard with Chelsea, the list goes on. There's always times when prominent figures have left teams. And actually, even we're seeing it with Tottenham at the minute. Spurs are looking really good without Kane. I'm not saying that Kane was a problem there and it took him to leave to perform well. Maybe they would have done the same. But what I'm saying is a prominent figure leaves, it doesn't always spell doom and gloom. So I think that Liverpool...
Can I just counter that?
Go on.
When Alan Shearer left Newcastle, fuck me, we never seen the top over the table for 10 years. It was like, God, it's nearly, we can see it just.
I think you look at what happened with Mane though. Like, you could argue very strongly that they let Mane go at the right time. Like, he was waning in terms of his
he's dropped off a cliff since then. Kind of.
So if
it didn't work out with Bayern.
If you're looking at like sells at the right time, it's going to be a really interesting one now whether they cling on to Salah for this summer and then let him go next summer, because I can see him still being incredibly valuable for them this year. But I think next summer might be the time to let him go, cash in, and maybe they won't get 100 million.
So I think Joy made great points, by the way. I think here in the Harry Kane analogy is a really good point. The worry is financially, we've seen that how much you get for a player can differ massively within 12 months. So, like, 31 with a great season behind him, still one of the best performing Premier League players and an icon, or 150 million maybe. They'd buy that. They would spend that, maybe even more. But one season where maybe Liverpool finish worse off and he doesn't quite perform, and then there's another year down on his contract. He's 32. The lights, I don't know.
He'll still go Saudi, but he just won't go for the same amount of money.
Yeah.
But look, I think the thing about Liverpool is they don't seem to have great succession planning. They haven't executed it very well.
They used to.
I think they built a really good team and they managed it very well. But when we talk about even the first wave of the changeover, which is this new front three that they've bought, like, they bought a striker when they needed a centre midfielder. Like, it just never really made sense. And then they brought in Endo. No one really understands. Like, there's no real backup for their fullbacks. There's a lot of stuff where it's just like, I feel like even their goalkeeper, if Alisson's out, it's a real like conundrum as to what happens and what level of performance comes underneath. They've got nothing.
I think they are still envious though. Like, if you look at other teams, they would love the front five options that Liverpool have. I think they would love to have the wing backs that they have. They would love to have the goalkeeper. Like, on paper and actually even in practice, Liverpool still have a very good team. And I actually think it's quite easy to say that they're not going to compete this season when they still really, let's be honest, they're going to be right up there and probably finish third, fourth. They're going to be right up there.
So one thing that makes this interesting today, and I don't know if this is exactly true, but I've just seen this tweeted out and it probably is true. Alisson, Robertson, Van Dijk, Matip, Trent Alexander. Apparently, that's the same back five that they had in the Champions League final like 4 years ago. That shows how they're not turning it over quick enough, just generally. And look, it's not a bad defence by any means, and like Trent's still young as hell, but it's just not healthy for a squad to be stagnant for that long.
Look, Matip's been injured. He's getting on anyway, and he's been injured pretty much for the last 2 seasons.
Oh, we should target him today.
And 100% it feels like they need to move on. The fact that, what's the centre-back?
Konate.
Should be there. I don't know why he's not there.
I think he might have had a knock today.
Yeah, so I just think, but the lack of rotation means that they're always going to be slightly stuck with this kind of rigid, like, this is our team. Anything outside of this, our team struggles. And even if you're looking on their bench, there's not enough to come off and be like, oh, if he doesn't come on, he's going to make it happen. The midfield is bone dry.
Barring Salah having a bad injury, the chances are he's still going to be available for this transfer at the end of the season, right? Is there an argument to say that maybe potentially Liverpool's board or the powers that be might be holding on and think, do you know what, if we can move him, we can still move him at the end of next season, get the same sort of money, and being that we need to look at how we do this season, is it going to be better to do that and then decide who spends that money, whether it's Jurgen Klopp, whether it's someone else? Because you've got to look at it and go, if Liverpool don't get Champions League football, if they don't finish 4th or 5th, if it gets them that, are they going to want to give Jurgen Klopp the money when recent history would suggest that he hasn't spent it all that wisely?
I feel like if they don't retain Klopp, I think those owners are going to get run out of that club because the fans love him so much and they know he hasn't been supported, not even just in terms of money, but in terms of getting the signings over the line. The fact that those two midfielders, Lavia and Caicedo, rejected you for any reason and you're Liverpool, that's a really bad omen as to what's going on behind the scenes because it's not a Klopp problem. It's not a club problem. It's a great club to go to.
I think Klopp with the right recruitment is always going to be a success. It's just that hasn't happened. And whether that's his fault, because you never know who the fuck's signing people. Like, apparently Klopp was taking more responsibility, but how much, I don't know.
I think just to have a bit of caution here. Obviously, this is a massive game today, and we're gonna get into it, and we'll discuss the team sheets in a second. But obviously, Endo has come in, and while he isn't Caicedo or Lavia, he's certainly an option that can provide some metal in the midfield, which they've desperately needed, right? And to say
he's going to find that out, for sure.
Absolutely, and to say
just very, very quickly, we're all, when I mean all of us, I mean Liverpool fans, us at the table, everyone apart from the internal scouting team of Liverpool have no idea what that signing is, and the fact that he walked straight into the starting 11 is so worrying.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have to say, right, if Endo does become the midfield destroyer that sits in front of the defence and is a position that they've really, really needed, in fact, Fabinho, he needed to be replaced last year. If he becomes that, Szoboszlai and McAllister have the engine and the guile in the middle of midfield to do something very positive. And maybe they're going to be one of those teams that does shut us all up. I think Liverpool have the potential to really surprise people.
I hope you're wrong. You know what I hope happens today? As I hope we get at this defence, we smash that midfield to smithereens, and we silence this front three. Looking at the team sheets anyway, Robertson, Van Dijk, Matip, Trent with Alisson behind them, Endo, McAllister, Szoboszlai, and Salah, Gakpo and Diaz. Last season, that front three was the most lethal front three Newcastle played against. It was terrifying. And especially Gakpo, he drifted in like a silencer fucking sniper rifle. Like, he was horrendous. Like, he just destroyed us. Newcastle playing the same team that we played against Man City. Disappointed Almiron starts. I hope he proves me wrong. But even against Villa, he wasn't great. And against City, he was terrible. And I had people tweeting me afterwards saying, like, are you mental? And I'm like, they never actually say why you're mental. They just go, you're mental. They never actually tell, what did he do in that whole fucking game? He just ran round. He offered nothing. Last season, he started like a house on fire. And this season, unfortunately, it's been more of the Steve Bruce version of Almiron. So I need to say something, because I think he's there because Eddie Howe feels comfortable and confident in that. He will track back. He offers you more defensively than Bonds. But really? Bonds is so direct, so attacking, so ruthless in front of goal. And we're going to say, because, you know, Gordon is going to be on Trent Alexander-Arnold. Gordon's looked razor sharp this season. Without having amazing end product, it's been much better. And we're almost underway here.
Before we kick off, Brian, can we just have, I want your in particular, can we have a prediction for the
3-1 Newcastle.
Joey?
I'm going to go 2-1 Newcastle.
Marv?
I go 3-2 Newcastle.
I'm going to say 2-2.
I'm surprised that no one picked Liverpool because I'm happy, but fingers crossed.
Do you know what makes me back Newcastle over Liverpool? And we were saying this before. With Liverpool, you can get a 9 out of 10 performance. You can also get a 4 out of 10 performance. With Newcastle, you would put your money that more often than not, you're going to get a solid 7 out of 10.
You're right.
And if you churn out 38 7 out of 10s per season, more often than not, you're going to come away with...
And also another thing this season, Liverpool have not lost yet, and they've had a couple of games where they haven't looked amazing in either game.
No.
So I'm like, could you expose this?
You've got one of the best defences in the Premier League, I would say, but Liverpool got one of the best attacks, and so there's got to be goals in this game. Just as we see a corner come in.
I'll just be really frustrated if we don't score. That'll drive me up the wall because this defence is so gettable now. And against City, we had boots on the wrong foot, man. It was so fucking annoying. And one of the main setups for this game that I think is really interesting is Bruno Guimaraes got very passionate in a Twitter spat with a Newcastle fan group. Basically, the fan group tweeted something out like, "Are Newcastle fans wrong to be criticising individual players early in the season?" And it was quite an innocuous little tweet of like just asking for engagement, right? It wasn't meant as like these players are shit, but in the picture, Bruno was in there, right? And Bruno's like, he's a right passionate Latin guy, right? Like part of the reason he plays with his heart on his sleeve, he's driven by that fire inside of him. And obviously that fire's always there, even when he's reading Twitter. And he replied with the following: "Is this serious? We are in the Champions League football. We lost against maybe one of the best teams in the world, and we have a big win and lost one game. Supporting the best moment is easy. Short, stupid memories you all have.
Wow.
Look what we have done for this team in 1 year and a half." So that had Newcastle fans, right? This was the best bit. Do you know when like the girlfriend who's way out of your league sort of claps back at you and you realise like, fuck, we're actually really lucky to have this girl. So all these Newcastle fans start licking the arse of Bruno. Like, it was like a nationwide like, "We love you, Bruno. Don't hate us.
You're different."
It was so fucking wild. And like there was a bit of that in me like, I probably shouldn't have said that, shouldn't I? But in reality, Newcastle didn't perform to their best against Man City. And I think that he probably knew that. Like he, in particular, had one of the best opportunities and scuffed his shot. So I'm very interested to see what Bruno looks like in this game. But
you know what? It's how quickly fans can become entitled. Because I remember coming on this show 2 years ago, and your face of despair of just everything that was happening at the club at every level. You had nothing positive to say, and it's like very quickly, it's now like the expectation is so high. It's like slagging players off 2 games in. So I think he's right to set the expectation. Like, please remember where we've been. Even for Arsenal fans, like I've seen some absurd things. I saw someone say Martin Odegaard doesn't need to start. And I was just like, I need to block this person because you're an idiot. He's like, we should start Fabio Vieira instead. He looks ready. I was like, listen, just relax. We all remember where we were, where season tickets at Arsenal, I could get them 2 minutes before the game if I wanted to. And now it's a struggle. I have to beg for them. So with all due respect, we're doing very well. Let's just contextualise our feedback.
I think there's an argument to say that Newcastle fans haven't become entitled, though, because that particular thing that that Bruno was replying in response to, it wasn't even actually.
I'll be honest.
People saying, hypothetically, could this happen? Anytime I've spoke about Newcastle on my own page, I'd said at one point that I think they'd be happy with a top 6 finish if they had a little run in the Champions League. And this was about a month ago. The main gist I got of it, the gauge that I got of it, was Newcastle fans saying, yeah, as long as it's, as long as we keep moving in this direction, we're in no urgent race to get there this season, next season, because it's, easy enough to feel like that when you know it's going to come within the next decade or so anyway. But I don't think Newcastle fans are getting entitled with it. I think that Eddie Howe would have a lot of leeway if he went under a bad run of form, and I also think that the players that got them to the position they got to last season would all be massively supported by it.
I feel like I've had a different relationship with with the fan base.
No, Mob's pissed him off. But leave him alone. Come on, give him a pass.
still
He's
mad.
me mate. But no, I think a little bit of it, right, was Bruno deep down knew he got the runaround against Man City, and he was feeling it there. And him then saying that triggered that inside of him to then overly defend himself. Do you know when you have an argument with a woman, she starts attacking you, and you're like, I see what's going on here. Best form of defense is attack. And he's passionate, right? And I'm willing to give him a pass for that because it's that passion that makes him deliver. But if we're being honest, and I've had a conversation with many Newcastle fans where early last season, the feeling was this lad is an absolute world beater. And towards the end of the season, the performances were a bit up and down. So for me, I'm interested to see how Bruno looks next to a Tonali. Because Tonali his level looks quite high.
Is there anything to read
Liverpool are
in?
attacking. Oh,
Dan Burn.
Is there anything to read into the fact that Bruno sent that tweet very close to the news breaking that Man City pulled out of that Paqueta deal?
well, the contract negotiations with Bruno are ongoing, and we haven't re-signed him yet. And Pep is a fan, 100%. He is as Pep Guardiola footballer as they get, from what I've seen.
Joey, you're a little shit stir. Right?
That was expertly done. But just dear Newcastle, please do not arm Arteta with Guimaraes in addition to what he already has. Please get the contract signed. We do not want to face even more monsters at that club. Thank you very much.
No, but we'll see on the Bruno thing. I think overall, he deleted the tweet. Do you think he was wrong? Because players take a lot of shit and they never lash out. Do you think it's good that he voiced his thing?
I think it's a bad precedent. I think it's a bad precedent because although he probably is right on this particular one and he got the tone right, it's very, very easy to find yourself yelling into the abyss at fans, and it's just not a relationship that you can afford to break down. So I think it's best that you just allow them to share what they're sharing and you just celebrate what you can and then leave it when it doesn't go
My
well.
worry is if he has a stinker now, he's opened that door.
Do you not want the players playing for your club though to be more human? And are we all just a bit sick? I'm personally really sick of it, where I'm just getting the same media trained answers, the same PR responses, and these guys are scared to talk to anyone, let alone journalists, about how they really feel about their club and their own performances and their team's performances. I actually miss that era. Maybe it was sort of dying out in the late 90s and the early 2000s, but even then it was very different.
Yep.
Of players that just, they had a personality, they had a perspective, they were speaking out. If they weren't happy with something, they would say it. If they weren't happy with one of their teammates, they would call them out. We had with Newcastle, we had teammates fighting on the pitch, it feels very, I don't know, sterile.
Yeah.
It's about knowing where to draw the line, I think, as well, though, because if you do go back at fans, you do it once, you're expected to do it every time almost. And also, never underestimate how pathetic the people on Twitter can be. So if they know, that, do you know what? Like, we might get a rise out of this fella, and I'm feeling a bit rubbish about myself. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to get online and slate him as much as I possibly can. You'll get it all the time. And you'll find that there'll be 11 players on that pitch, more with substitutes, but it'll be that one player, that one time that went back to someone on Twitter, he'll get 90% of the negative tweets and the negativity thrown their way. So my personal thing would be stay out of it altogether.
Okay,
but it's
Yeah,
so happy medium is don't do it on Twitter because no one, most of these fuckers on Twitter have no life and they're literally just there to fucking shit on your life. But a bit more personable in post-match interviews. I look at people like Maddison, like Grealish, people who have connected with fan bases because they're not trying to be this perfect robot footballer. Oh, Mo Salah is practically fighting on the football pitch. And I want Bruno to put that across more. Like in this documentary, he comes across really like a good bloke, but he just needs to let it out more in the right way and go, look, I wasn't at my best today. We got the run around from City. I know we can do better. We will be better. But like, it's the way he goes, you are all stupid. It's like,
yeah, but don't you think that so many people have been burnt from having a relationship with fans or people on Twitter. Like it's not, as you said, it's not a warm, fuzzy relationship, even though you're feeding them entertainment every week. You're giving, like, I know we sometimes look at players and we're like, oh, he didn't really try. And you're just like, I don't think you can be a professional football player, get on the pitch and not have something automatic about you that just gives everything that you have on that day. What you don't have, we don't know why. So we never know. Like, for example, with Dele Alli, we had no idea what was going on for him until recently, and the same for Lingard. So we think that actually it's not you just don't care, it's the fact that you don't have it. And so they're made to perform no matter what. So that relationship with the fans isn't like in the 90s where Harry Redknapp's sitting down with Lampard and a group of fan, that would never happen now. A group of fan channels being like, hey man, we don't think Lampard's really great. And he's just sitting there being like, oh, I'm going to try my hardest. Them days ain't going to happen because everyone's learned that that's not the healthiest way to engage in fans. It's too toxic.
And you bring up the Dele Alli thing, right? And I know there was a lot of empathy pouring out for Dele Alli. But let's say Dele Alli was playing for Manchester United now, or Liverpool, or any top club, and he has a bad game. Do you not think that the twats on Twitter would use that against him? Absolutely they would. Every dark thing that happened to him would be thrown in his face because that's the culture on Twitter. Because we've kind of given birth to a society now where cowards are safe and they can finally vent to people that they wouldn't dream of saying a word to and feel like a man, when in reality that you know, they're just little bitches.
How do you think it's going so far, Brian? A lot of people in the chat, and we see you all, thank you so much for all your comments. A lot of people in the chat are saying that Trent should have got sent off.
Should have.
Yeah, I maybe we didn't catch that because I was in the middle of looking at you lot. But I haven't seen that bit.
We are very pretty, everyone.
Yeah, gorgeous, man.
Yeah, he does keep looking
I've done
at
the
me.
grade myself. I'm very proud.
So basically, Trent's got pushed by Anthony Gordon, got pushed off the pitch. Then what he does is he picks up the ball, throws it back on the pitch, and gets a yellow card for that immediately. The ref walks over. He's obviously fuming. And then there was another one where, again, he gets pushed in the back and
You know what?
he reacts.
Trent, I'm all right, fair enough, I didn't say that bit, but Trent getting a yellow card 10 minutes in is great because he is probably going to get the run around a bit today.
Yeah.
I think he's a weak link, and I think we should be targeting him.
I think Gordon already is. He's been running at him every time he's got the ball.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that another area where Liverpool are maybe papering over the cracks a little bit?
Oh,
Because
TV's going to go into standby mode. Someone get the TV remote.
It says no, they've sorted it.
We obviously saw last season, towards the end of the season, one of the things that I think contributed to the uplift in Liverpool's form, when, let's be honest, towards the end of that last season, we were thinking, God, if they can go into next season like this, they're going to be a problem because they went on an unbeaten run, they look good. One of the main things that contributed to it was moving Trent into midfield. And now, you know, they've brought in midfielders. They brought in 3 first-team midfielders all of a sudden. We all know that although Trent was sort of playing in that sitting role, he wasn't a holding midfielder when it came to, you know, he's not a Makelele type. Is that a crack they've papered over that could emerge as this season goes on again? Because he does look vulnerable when you go at him.
Lads, we've got no signal here on TV. Could you sort it out, please, now?
I think it's an absolute terrible idea to see what he did at the back end of the season. Also, he was doing it for England as well. Ignore all of that information and then just put him right back again.
It seems strange, doesn't it?
It does feel strange. And I think when they were solving their midfield problem, that could have been one of the answers that they had, which means that they would have had to have bought a right back, and then that would have given them a bit more support and options to rotate players around. At this point in time, if they don't sign another right back, they don't really have many options apart from playing that particular team that they have right now. There's no one in the wings waiting there to make it so that it's actually a bit more competitive. So, yeah, I like him going forward. I hate him going backwards. He is an absolute nightmare, but I love watching him going forward. He does things that he puts the ball in places on a pin in a way that I think very rarely players can do so. I think De Bruyne is the only one, I think, on that level.
And when you say about that, especially with delivery as well, I can't think off the top of my head of someone else in that Liverpool side that can do the same as that. So I think that positionally, where you're having him on the pitch, when he is probably the most creative player.
Just click watch live, please. Watch live. Just click watch live, lads. Fuck me. Fucking hell.
We had a 90-second blackout. We did it all right.
I'm panicking. I'm going to miss the fucking goal. Newcastle are going to win this. Right. Note to self. Learn how to use Sky.
But yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one, and I feel that, you know, you look at what Chelsea are doing, and I don't necessarily agree with the level of players that they're signing, but they are really looking at the problems, and they've bought brand new players, 2 for every position. And I'm like, I look at Gusto, and I'm thinking, why wasn't that someone that Liverpool looked at and just think, actually, he'll be great competition for Trent. And I think that's what the fundamental difference is between teams, is that there are much more organised teams who are planning more intensely in the way that Liverpool just aren't. That's why I do feel that this is the end of an era, because they actually are. They need another 5-6 players to have a competitive squad. They've never really had one, but because of their first 11 isn't strong, the only way you're going to kickstart it is by having more players around and making it more competitive. So I think we're seeing the end of Liverpool. And I know it'll be hard to say, but I think that generation of them, that 5 years that they were incredible, I think it's over.
The end of Liverpool, though, like to say, what does that mean? As in the end of Liverpool, they're not going to challenge again?
This run of this team, it won't continue. You won't see this team competing for the league.
Yeah, so you don't think they're going to bounce back from 5th and come straight back up to Championship?
Because the thing is, it's more than that. It's like there's a momentum, and I think taking on Man City is a task that I don't envy Arsenal even attempting it. It's a very difficult task, and the fact is that they didn't even have the amount of players needed to do so. So their first 11 was used so intensely for that whole period of time that I think now we're just going to see a real drop off, just because actually everybody gave everything for so long, and they haven't been able to replace those players in the way that they need. So it's just a clock timing thing. I think it's just going to wind down. Players will leave. Salah will go. I think that front three they have right now will never get to a position where they were when they had Mane and Salah. It will never be that good. And so it's like they'll just slowly drift out of it. And then now you're talking about a bigger rebuild than you think you need. It's going to be a lot of money.
So Trent is
in a
pushing
good
on.
Position, plays in the middle, easily.
Lovely,
we'll take that. Thank you very much, Trent.
Right, and then the counter's
Come on
now.
Hurry up, man.
The counter's
fucking
on.
move the ball, you fucking idiot. Bruno's been... I'm not even just saying this, right? But Bruno has not been good so far in this game. He has been sloppy with his passes.
Whatever you do, don't tweet him.
We're in danger.
Oh,
good
yes.
save.
Good shot.
We'll take that. That was a really good run from Luis Diaz. The game's opening up. Newcastle really had Liverpool pinned back, did nothing with it. Gordon had a chance to open the game up, had a limp-wristed shot from 20 yards. It was shit. You could have opened the game up, could have passed it and brought everyone closer to the goal. And to be honest with you, Luis Diaz has just had the best chance of the game so far, 70 minutes gone. We need to step up a bit, yeah. Because we've got the possession to hurt them, but we're not doing anything with it.
Not yet, but I feel like your midfield is much stronger, and I feel like Anthony Gordon on the wings has been impeccable. So I think it's just a matter of grinding him down.
Almiron again offering zip, so that's one of my main worries is just. But it's a 90-minute game, and we've got options off the bench, which. Luckily, Callum Wilson's... when you look at Callum Wilson's minutes to goal record, it's fucking... Because, I made a comparison of Andy Cole. And someone said, Andy Cole, Callum Wilson in the same sentence. That's mental on Twitter. And I thought, Andy Cole, he's a legend. And I was simply just saying, maybe Callum Wilson could have had that kind of career if he'd had no injuries and he'd been playing for Man United. Mate, I looked at his goal record last season. It's fucking 18 goals in 31 games, and he wasn't even starting all 31.
I think it was 18 goals in 21 starts or
something like that. Yeah, it was fucking insane. I'm like, Andy Cole would fucking love that. So yeah, we'll have got decent options off the bench.
Do you know what? I think sometimes these things like player branding really matters. And I think sometimes we kind of ignore that and we try to do like for like. But if you're injured or your career journey goes a certain path, like for Andy Cole, he went from Arsenal, was it Bristol to Arsenal to Newcastle to Man United. And he's just in that, you're actually, that's a story of you progressing, going to the highest level and always scoring goals all the way through.
Yeah.
But I just think with Callum, he just hasn't had fashionable moves that tell the story of, actually, he was great at Coventry. So he then went to a big team and then continued going to bigger and bigger teams. So
even coming back from such bad injuries to continue scoring goals, that in itself is a credit to him. And not to go on and on about Callum Wilson again, but his goal record for Newcastle, his goals per game ratio is better than Andy Cole's at Man United. That's singing.
He's one of the rare players that, in this sort of dying breed of number 9s at the minute, he's one of the ones that if he goes for on goal, he's definitely scoring. You put him up there with Harry Kane and others. And when you look at even, for example, as a backup to Harry Kane for England, you've got Tammy Abraham, you've got Ollie Watkins, Harry Kane's obviously the starter. I don't think you'd pick anyone, even including Ivan Toney in that, ahead of Callum Wilson if you can guarantee that he turns up and he's fit.
Interesting one. Yeah, I think a lot of people would be backing Toney. I mean, if Tony was playing and he wasn't banned now, a lot of people would be saying he would be understudy just with his red hot form. And also, it seems like Ivan Toney will get a big move like in January.
Yeah, should we talk about Ivan Toney? Because that is a really interesting one. He did an interview recently with my old mate Steve, and he basically said, look, I was betting on myself, but to score first. Do you believe that?
I really like Ivan Toney, and he's a player that I'd love Chelsea to one day bring in, so I don't want to get off on the wrong foot. But he didn't take much responsibility in that interview I saw. I did sort of think a couple of times, like, okay, yeah, but you got to take the responsibility a little bit for these things. But again, it's one of those areas that a lot of people will disagree on. A lot of people think that you should be allowed to bet in football.
Yeah, but these guys know. And by the way, he even said this in the interview. They know that they're not allowed to bet. Like someone comes in, a representative comes in every year and gives them a talk to say betting is bad. You shouldn't be betting, and it happens at every big football club. And then he goes in the interview. Yeah. But I was only betting on myself to score. It's like, mate, do you know the rules? Just don't do it. And to say then to go sort of a sob story to say, I was only betting on myself. It's blah blah. It's an addiction. Well, it's just like, come on, mate. You know the rules. You're obviously going to get punished.
Does anyone believe it's an addiction?
It's a very easy get out of jail free card,
it's a
isn't
mental
it?
health card.
Surely, like if you catch me saying, yeah, but I am addicted.
Yeah.
It's like
the only reason why I will say it's just the sheer volume of it. The volume of it tells me that it's an addiction. It doesn't. It looks like addiction behavior. Also, the denial when
the
you're
volume being. Can you be specific? Just so I understand
I
what
think
you mean.
didn't he have like 117 possible charges? I think of that 96 were like brought to him. It's a lot of instances and over a long period of time for him to do that. So I think
I think
the
his
volume
betting
of
was
betting
that regular, as in.
It was over a long period of time.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Is like if I look at how often a normal bloke bets who I know happens to like a bet. I thought it was in line with casual betting.
Betting on that level when you know you're not supposed to bet.
Oh, okay.
And then outright just being like not taking accountability in public. That sounds like addict behavior to me. And so that's why I say, and I feel like we've got to a place now where we just don't believe anybody has mental health issues or any forms of addictions. Everything's an excuse, but the excuses don't work. So either people are telling the truth or they're going to say something that nobody's going to believe anyway.
So let me counter you a little bit. Is if you're going to say I'm an addict. And you're going to hold your hands up and do accountability, but then you're going to go, but I was only betting on myself though. Those two don't go hand in hand with me. It's total. It's either you're being accountable or you're not.
I don't think he's being accountable. I think he's in denial as to the scale of what the problem is. Because the fact is, you know that you shouldn't be betting, but for some people, there's a compulsion and need and a desire to bet on yourself, like to rev yourself up for games. Betting on yourself that you're going to do it is like an additional buzz for you. That's an addiction. That's a problem. And so we can't deal with it as like, I don't the fans are the fans. They can say what they want, but the game can't deal with it in a dismissive matter because inherently they have fed betting communications to him since he was a child. So as far as I'm concerned, they are as responsible as anybody else. And so now make it out as if like we've banned him and it's like we've got a plan. There's no plan.
Can I just say? Yeah, I was just going to say, I just hope that it's not just a punishment, that there's an element of rehabilitation to this. Because, we can't just slap 6 months, 8 months ban on these players and not actually help them with the inherent issue. If he does honestly have an addiction and it is that serious, we should be looking after him rather than just punishing him.
I think it's easy for him as well to feel a bit bitter about the situation when you look into other cases and other punishments. So say, for example, Joey Barton. Joey Barton was found guilty of placing 4 times as many bets. Joey Barton gets an 18-month ban. Ivan Toney got an 8-month ban. So Joey Barton didn't even get twice the amount of time banned from the game. And then you look at it, and if you're Ivan Toney, you might go, well, is it because, let's be honest, Joey Barton was of a pretty rubbish level compared to where Ivan Toney was at last season. And Ivan Toney's just coming into the fold. Like we have literally just discussed, he was potentially the number 2 to Harry Kane in that England setup. And then you're looking at that and he's thinking, well, I have been made an example out of. I don't know if I necessarily would agree with it, but when you look at that's just one example. The Joey Barton one's one example. There's multiple other cases when you look at the punishments and then you look at it in line with what Ivan Toney got and you sort of think, oh, well, maybe this is to make a message.
Storms into the box, got a chance to make something of it, turns around to no one, crosses to no one. Stupid bastard.
Just knock it in if you're not
Mate,
sure.
he's fucking one-footed, man.
But yeah, no, I think the Ivan Toney thing, and I think it is fair to call out those things if you feel like you've been hard done by. Just come with evidence. But for me, it sounds like he has, he's not held his hand up fully and just been like, I'm really sorry, I just want to get back to playing football. He still feels like he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder.
How do they catch these people though? Why do you not just get your mate to do all your betting?
Apparently,
He did.
he did, and apparently it's all the betting companies that are like reporting them.
There
You
was
can find patterns.
There was an event which I know you'll remember, Brian. David Hay had to appear in front of the British Boxing Board of Control. He did nothing, didn't throw a punch for 2.5 rounds against Audley Harrison. Third round, knocks him out. In the ring after, does a post-fight interview and goes, I knew it was going to be the third round. I told him.
Gordon in. Gordon in.
No.
Score.
Goal.
Yes, son! Get in, lad! Thank you very much, son. Come on. They said he was nothing. They said he was useless. Well spent money, that is. Come on. From Liverpool to destroy Liverpool.
Why did he have
Get
such
in.
a bad time at last season at Newcastle? What was happening for him? Because he just seemed to be like every day was bad news. But he's clearly a good footballer.
There
I
was
can
He's
see that ever.
quality this
Where did that
season.
come from?
And what did we
Okay.
say?
Mistake.
Trent Alexander-Arnold attacked that wing, and he was on him, and Trent miscontrolled
That
it.
is
He
Trent's fault,
steals it off Trent.
Salah mistake.
Get in.
Trent's got a yellow card. He's made a mistake. He should have got a red card.
Oh, that's
He's
Get
having a
in.
Barney today.
And then
yeah.
good finish. What a finish by
Through
Gordon.
the
Through the
legs.
legs.
Through
Yeah.
the legs, lads.
Absolutely
Yes.
That
brilliant.
gives the a bit of argument, weight to the argument about them needing another right back as well.
I tell you what, the look on poor, and I like Trent, right? I think Trent's a fantastic footballer, but he's a midfielder. Do you know what I mean? He's like David Beckham. He should be playing in the Beckham role.
I don't want to speak too soon with Anthony Gordon, but we've got to give a lot of plaudits here to Eddie Howe, because when you look at how Anthony Gordon has performed this season, right? We looked at Eddie Howe and we looked at the signings he had brought in, and it looked like everything Newcastle touched had turned to gold, yeah? Every player they brought in through the door under Eddie Howe had done a really good job. But then you look at also the things that he'd done with the players that were already there. Joe Linton, he was almost like a laughing stock. Eddie Howe completely performed him. And then finally, we got to witness Eddie Howe bring in a player that everyone went, well, that's the one that breaks the trend then, because he didn't get it right on that one. There was the moment when he got brought off the pitch against Brentford.
Remember Jordan Ibe signed for Bournemouth?
Remember Jordan Ibe,
That became Eddie Howe doesn't know how to buy good players. That whole narrative, the fact that Eddie Howe had Bournemouth in the Premier League for 5 years meant nothing because Jordan Ibe. And I think most of these signings have been great from Eddie. You're right.
Is Eddie making the signings, Brian, though?
I think Eddie
feel
is
that
having. So Eddie is definitely having a massive say in it, because in the documentary, the Amazon documentary, when they sign Gordon, a lot of it's down to Eddie really wants him. What a ball from Gordon!
Is that a foul?
Questionable.
It looks like
and it's a foul.
They've given it.
yellow card.
Red.
It could be a red.
Red, he's off.
He's Oh yes! Van Dijk's off!
VAR will kick in.
And Jurgen Klopp, cry some more, you fucking bitch! Cry, you fucking bitch!
Brutal.
I'm sick of this, man.
So this will 100% be VAR'd. It did look
think
like
it's
he
a
was
yellow.
close to the last
Do you know what
round,
it is?
but
It probably wasn't a red.
yeah, it probably wasn't. So the amount
not
of
going to be a
contact
victory
here,
for
I've
football
lost
today, is it?
I've lost it, lad. I've gone.
the amount
I'm finished.
the amount of contact here was fairly minimal.
Hey,
I don't know, man.
If it's
He
last
kinda
man
went over
back,
in the
though,
heat.
wait there. What did Bruno Fernandes get the player sent off for? Last man back.
Yeah.
This is identical to that in terms of position, in terms of who it was.
Right, do we think this is a red card before we've seen the replay?
Probably not.
No, I
everyone?
don't think it's not.
You don't think it is? Joey, do you think this is a red card?
I'm just going to say, I didn't really see it well enough.
It wasn't a good angle, though. It wasn't a
It
good
wasn't,
angle.
and it happened very quickly.
I'll tell you what, Anthony
Van Dijk's
Gordon's
still
confidence has gone through the roof there,
That
because that
ball.
was Trent. That was Trent. He was up again there. He knows
reverse.
now.
Oh,
No,
it's
it's
a
a
red.
red.
He's gone through him. It's a red.
It's
That
a
is a
red.
fucking
I don't know,
red.
though. I
He's
think
gone through
It's a
him.
yellow.
He's
I
gone
still
through
think
him,
it's a
mate.
yellow.
Nah, that's a red. That he's gone through him.
Nah.
He's on goal, man. He's in on goal. You can't. There's no consistency in the Premier League right now, because you've got Bruno Fernandes tucked down in the same position, and he gets the man sent off.
I don't know.
If this
That's
isn't a
yellow.
red card,
That's a yellow and a free kick, man.
He's telling him
get
to go.
off. Get off.
Mate,
I
you
think
can't
they're
keep
getting up
going
is
on
more
here.
because of his attitude at this
Yeah,
point.
the entitlement, man.
Yeah,
If
but
you're-
the
if you're-
referee said to him just to wait a minute, and he should have just humbled himself until he got the decision, because now he's being asked to leave the field because he's being too abusive. Look,
Come on, mate.
It's poor judgment. It's poor judgment.
How is
from
Van Dijk handling this? So he's literally in his face giving
Not
it
very
that.
well.
But it's poor judgment as well, because you know that if you go there in that position during that run of play, you have got to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So another position on the pitch, fine, you know, but
He's made a mistake there, and the
Look at-
reason
look at
why
the
he's
fans.
so annoyed is because he
The
knows.
fans are waving him off.
That's why he's so annoyed, because he knows he's made a mistake.
Mate, you're playing against one of the best strikers in the world in Isak. You can't just clean him out when he's through on goal like that. Like, he knows more than anyone. That's Virgil van Dijk. He's one of the best defenders in the world, and he's giving it the big one now. He's probably going to get even more games banned because he's mouthing off to the referees and that on the sidelines. Because even his conduct after the sending off.
That's a poor reaction.
Yeah.
Very
When
poor
when
reaction.
Klopp's,
From a
Look at
when
this.
Klopp's
Look
trying
at
to
this.
calm
He's
you
gone
down.
through him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
He's not got a leg to stand on there. And Isak certainly doesn't. Because he was clattered.
Let's get
to
Kieran
be honest,
Trippier on this. Come on.
I think the biggest disappointment was his response and his attitude of that even being called a foul. Because if he had just waited, the referee was willing to wait for VAR to have the feedback. But because of how he went on, he just asked him to remove himself because the VAR check hasn't been done.
Mate, Liverpool in their
No, they
last
were looking
game,
at it.
Slobozai full-blown dived and got a penalty. Don't complain to me about you don't get decisions or anything. You got a fucking blatant dive awarded as a penalty in your last game. That's a foul in the box. Outside the box.
Right, chat, I want to know, do you think that was a red card? Because it's certainly divided at the moment, I would say, in the chat.
Yeah.
What is
Certainly
the
divided.
argument for it not being a red? Because it looked like he got a bit
it
of the ball.
was fairly soft, is what people are saying.
Oh, well, yeah, but you brought him down.
Again, this is what I'm saying about judgment. You need to realise where you are on the pitch at what moment in the
question.
game. If he goes through there and he doesn't make the challenge, it's a goal.
Yeah,
2-0.
but especially with Isak, it's a
2-0.
fucking
It's
goal. He's
2-0.
got ice in his
Do
veins.
you know what?
We've got free kick
in
here in
other
Trippier.
years, he would have shepherded in Isak out.
Why
and
was Shaw
through.
taking
Why did she?
Question though. When Bruno Fernandes is through one-on-one with the keeper yesterday, and you have a tiny hand on his shorts, which isn't huge amount of contact. It wasn't a massive tackle. It wasn't a clattering. He brought him down. It was a sending off. I don't see any difference between the kick that Isak got in that. Yeah, it wasn't a horrendous, massive horror challenge leg breaker, but it was enough to bring him down.
Yeah.
He was running through on goal at pace. That's what happens.
And like we say, it's Isak running through on goal.
Yeah.
It's not Dan Burn, luckily, kitting up there. It's Isak running
Go
through
on.
on goal.
Wow.
Oh, you fucker.
You pretty much know that game goes to 2-0 there, and whether they got 10 or 11 on the pitch, it's probably dead at that point. You know, you look at Newcastle's record defensively, and it would have been very, very hard for Liverpool to even get anywhere near to going back in the
Do you
game.
know the best bit about it though? Jurgen Klopp's going to whinge like fuck about this. Yes. Yes. Bring it on.
I do have a genuine question, yes. Can Klopp get sacked this year? Is that at all possible?
Well, that brings us on to another debate, Marvin. And this was raised by Joy, and I love this question, mate, because you rightly noticed there's a pattern in the Premier League. Let me just find my note here on the top 6. Is that last season, both Conte and Tuchel got sacked. The season before, Lampard and Ole got sacked. The season before, Mourinho got sacked. The season before, Poch and Unai Emery got sacked. So history would suggest that every season, at least one of the big 6 or 7 managers gets sacked. So, who is the most likely out of that 7 to get sacked this season?
I think
Who do we consider the top 6?
The big 7 being Newcastle.
The big 7 clubs. So I think that the best thing you can do to answer this question is go, right, who can you rule out? You can rule Pep out. Not because, if they had a Chelsea-like season, it wouldn't happen, but just because it's not going to happen in terms of they're not going to have that sort of season. I also think, for the points I made earlier, I also think you can rule Newcastle out because I think that something would have to go horribly wrong. Newcastle finishing 8th this year, in my opinion, does not result in Eddie Howe.
I don't think
sacked. It puts him in a vulnerable position in the next season where maybe if he doesn't hit the ground running, but I think you can rule Eddie Howe out. So I think there's managers that you could never rule Pochettino out because of the club he's at. You could never
Same for Spurs.
You could never rule, you could never rule Postecoglou out. But I think the ones that are the most interesting is if you look at Ten Hag and you look at Jurgen Klopp. And
I don't think Jurgen gets
Arteta's
sacked.
not going anywhere.
I don't think I think Arteta and Pep are the safest 2 for me by a mile.
You know the thing though is the longer a club goes without sacking a manager, the more chance there is of them.
So we speak about it possibly being Jurgen Klopp. The only thing I would say to caveat that would be it's not completely out of the realms of possibility that Jurgen Klopp finishes his tenure as Liverpool manager, but I don't necessarily know if that would be through a sack.
He won't get sacked. If Klopp goes, I think it will go on his own accord, and I don't think it will be mid-season. I could see him leaving at the end of the year as opposed to midway through.
I think
it would take
Klopp
something
is a god
huge
there, and as much as I like reveling in his misery because I think he's been a bit of a twat in the last 12 months, especially towards Newcastle. My respect for him is 100%.
Yeah.
Like, the reason I want to win this so bad is because I respect him so much. But I agree. I think he's just done too much to be treated in a bad way. And I think the fans love him so much, as I found out the hard way in the last week. So I think potentially you'd look at Poch, you'd look at Ten Hag, you'd look at the Spurs manager as the most likely three.
I'll tell you why it's not going to be Pochettino. It's not going to be Pochettino because Chelsea's owners have a vision for the club and a plan for the club. And whether you say, well, actions speak louder than words, and the actions are that they are going to be trigger happy when it comes to the managerial appointments like the last ownership, I do think that when you look at the fact that they spent, how much was it to get Graham Potter out of Brighton?
25 million.
25 million, right? They did not spend 25 million to appoint a project manager when they didn't want a project, okay? You could spend a lot less money than that and you could have gone and got Pochettino straight away. You got
They did sack him.
Sack him, though.
They did sack him, but I think that what ended up happening there was they realised, okay, the vision we had may have been right, but the guy we had at the wheel wasn't the right person to do it. And I do think that if you look at, if they were to sack Pochettino now, well, what do?
Is it in?
Is it in? No. What a save, Alisson.
Was that Almiron that
Mate,
shot?
Alisson he's the best keeper in the world, this prick.
Yeah, he is.
Wow.
He is.
Literally.
Who was
He's
it
the
that
only
shot?
goalkeeper you can score against
a
and still
save.
not score against. What a save.
If Almiron scores that, Brian,
What,
you are going insane.
Mate, I've got to give Alisson credit. That was
That's a big,
elite.
big save.
What about Almiron? Where's his credit?
If he'd scored, I'd be
If Almiron scores that, I've got to give Alisson some credit.
Good effort.
That was just unbelievable keeping. To
Right,
be fair, like.
I've got to go back at Joey here because I think Poch, like, if he doesn't get top 6 this season, I think he's in big trouble.
Wait there. Just to explore a little bit, and we'll get on to Chelsea properly in a minute. If it continues to be a bit hit and miss, even if you're just mid-table, which could easily happen, I'm not saying it will happen, but it could happen if you carry on with this indifferent form. There's a gun to his head.
This is results time.
Todd Bowley has proven he will sack anyone.
Yeah.
And I paid 25 million for you, I'll sack you.
Okay, so let's pretend you are Todd Bowley. You sack Pochettino, yeah? We're on and off. We're winning some, losing some, not picking up results that we feel we should be. You sack Todd Bowley. The obvious option to bring in as manager is...
No one.
No one.
Same
no
with
one. So,
before.
why are we going to keep doing... Yeah, we'll have... Who's at Brighton? We'll have him. No, you can't keep doing the same thing and hoping for a different result. So I do truly believe that when it came to sacking Graham Potter, there was the chance that you could go, yeah, okay, but we did take a little bit of a gamble. He was unproven. You look at what Brighton are doing now. He's left and they've actually started converting a high XG to actual goals. And actually, they're going on to bigger and better things while we are plateauing, if not becoming worse. So there's always that thing of going, okay, we brought in the wrong man here. You can't then say that about Pochettino because the other option is, what do you think? You're going to get Pep out of City? There's no one else that you could possibly appoint that it would make more sense. Whereas when you had Potter there was the option of going, you could go and get a Pochettino.
But don't you feel like you can say that about every single top 6 team? Like, where is the clear, who would Liverpool get if they got rid of Klopp? There's no real clear manager hovering around waiting for a job at this point. So I think this might be the one year that we see more stability than any other years because, as we said, Man City and I think Arsenal just as a club would never sack someone mid-season like that. I think they have a relationship with Arteta that's deeper than just like, we're going to get rid of you. I feel that the most likely player mutiny is here at Liverpool.
That's exactly what I think because I also
mutiny, yeah.
I also think Jurgen Klopp's going to be very much against this Mo Salah move. That's a player that he definitely wants there, despite you seeing him subbing him off against Chelsea.
Yeah.
That is a player that if he was to leave, then I think serious questions are going to start to be asked from Jurgen Klopp of the board and how they're running this club. You can't get rid of all my senior figures in one
Just
window.
to go back to the point you made, you said you can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. But in the mind of Todd Bowley, an American man who clearly doesn't understand football on the level that he needs to, in his mind, different manager, different. He's not thinking, I'm changing them. He's thinking different manager, different.
But do you know what? The thing about Pochettino is, and I look at him, is I feel he knows how to get as much out of these players as anybody does. He has a plan. He's prepared to fall out with people. I think those type of managers don't get sacked 6 months through the season. So I think he's going to be fine. And I think really the expectation and the time he'll have with the Chelsea squad will be enhanced because they're not in Europe. So I think, he would have to do a lot to get fired this year. Like they'd have to go literally be in a relegation battle after Christmas to be like, actually, it's time to move on. But I don't think that's going to happen.
This is the only reason why I'm saying that Poch is the one. Because if you look at it across the top 7, as we're saying, everyone looks like they are fairly set. I can't see there being a...
I also think the standards of Spurs, given that they've lost Harry Kane and after finishing 8th, Postecoglou is in... Yeah, you're safe, bro.
They can't
we're not talking
low.
about Ten Hag enough. Like, I'm going to be really honest, and I think I said this at the end of last season. Man United are in trouble because they haven't been able to bring in players and do a refresh in a way that they needed to, and their team just looks a little bit stale. And we've seen that now with like their midfield of Eriksen, Casemiro, Fernandes, and Mount. That is not going to win you very, very much.
The thing about Ten Hag that's great for him in terms of his CV is they release some sort of like points after the first X amount of games, and in Premier League history, his first
40 games it was
40.
Yeah.
He was on like 78 points, and Pep was on 81, 82. So he has had a good start to Manchester United life. It's whether or not after spending 400 million in 2 windows or two, this is his second season now.
No, it's offside.
The only way that Ten Hag will get sacked, because it won't be by the current board, is if the new board comes in and they do what Chelsea have done, where they've gone, we need to replace him and get our man in there. And that would be it would be a slightly strange one.
Who our man would be.
3 on 4 here, Newcastle, Gordon, into Almiron. Terrible from Almiron. Absolutely horseshit. Absolute horseshit.
I think...
he missed a fucking... I didn't get to say it. They were talking before. He blew a fucking shot over the bar as well.
You were just saying you did a great shot a minute ago.
No, the one after that was fucking terrible.
But, come on.
He was on the edge of the box and he couldn't even get it anywhere near the target, man. It was at the corner flag.
I think what Ten Hag would have going in his favour if it came to these managers in the managerial sack race that we're looking at, he's at a club where the owner's priority isn't instant success when it's winning leagues. It's making sure they've got that revenue coming in from finishing in those Champions League spots. But I do think what Ten Hag had massively going in his favour last year, 3rd place flattered that team for how they performed last season. We look at the fact that Spurs had a season off. Liverpool, until they sort of started to come good towards the end, and that was only enough to get in 5th place, they had a season off. Chelsea had even worse than a season off. We nearly went down. So I think that Ten Hag had the luxury that although Arsenal and Man City were pushing right up there was a bit of a gulf between 2nd to 3rd place position. I think that if he doesn't do well this year, serious questions are going to have to be asked, because you look at even the signings he's brought in, none of them have really hit the ground running doing that well.
He's had a lot of his own signing as well. For me, Anthony is probably one of the worst signings that I've seen in a very long time. And I just think they just have a lot of things that they need to refresh. I think they're going to struggle in the Champions League as well. I think they're going to get a couple of hidings and they could exit quite early. So I think he's under pressure in a way that we're not really acknowledging, because Casemiro, again, looks, as Brian said, looks like he's like aged 10 years in a pre-season. So
the Mason Mount one is a bit of a dilemma they've got as well, because I don't think that Mason Mount and Bruno can really play on the same pitch and both be able to perform to the level that we know, because I think it contradicts itself a little bit. And if you look at Mason Mount as well, everyone said, okay, Chelsea fans are being really, really harsh on Mason Mount. They're now saying he's rubbish just because he's left them. Mount had a bad season before he had left us, He was 23 at the end of that season. So everything would suggest that because of his age, he can come good and can keep coming back to the levels we saw of him. But we do look at other players. Ross Barkley, for example, right? He was a player that by 23, 24 was starting to fizzle out. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, he was a player that was perceived as being a real talent, for the England team as well. And was a player that by that age was sort of on the slide. So there's nothing to say that couldn't be exactly what's happening with Mount.
He should be a winger for them.
I want to come into Man United properly in a minute, because they've had some really interesting results. But before we do, if we had to put money on it, what top 7 manager gets sacked first?
Ten Hag.
Sacked Ten Hag.
I don't think, I'm going to caveat this, but I don't think any of them will get sacked. But I could see Postecoglou being the one. I know they've started really well, but as in he's the weakest out of all of those options in terms of like the experience, the credibility.
Nah, if he's 8th, no one's going to kick up a fuss.
I think
No,
most likely club to sack is Chelsea because of the way they run.
Yeah.
Most likely situation to absolutely deteriorate and fall apart is Man United. So I would then put Ten Hag.
Yeah, I'll say Poch for the reason you explained. Not because I don't rate Poch. I think he's good. I just think you have a wobble. I don't know how lenient Bowley's going to be because he's like, mate, I spent a fucking billion on this. Come on now. We need to be doing stuff. Okay, we're going to talk about Arsenal, then we're going to go into Man United because Arsenal, there's some questions being raised of Arteta's decision-making early this season. They've just come off the back of a 2-2 draw against Fulham, where you would have thought they would have won that game. And to be fair, Fulham really did play quite well, I thought. But what are the questions that you are having right now, Marvin, of like what Arteta is doing? What are you scratching your head at?
I think he identified some things in our squad and our team last season that made us vulnerable, that didn't make us as dangerous going forward, and he's trying to address them with a different approach. I think losing Timber is bigger than we realise, and we've kind of brushed over it because we're looking at what we had last year. But like a lot of the Arsenal fans are just looking at the defence we had last year and saying that this is the answer, and the midfield is Partey, Odegaard, and Rice, and we should just stick to that. But I think the problem is that when we are attacking, and a lot of teams were sitting back against us, we didn't have enough going forward. We didn't have enough different ways of getting out from the back. If you go back to the Brighton game where we lost 3-0 at the end of the season, they were just spinning us because we had no other way of getting out of our defence. And being able to knock it to Havertz as a sort of marksman on the halfway line or somewhere in between was a massive outlet for us, and it will be an outlet for us. Now, I'm not necessarily even saying that's the best idea, but if he figures out a way to make him work, there is an answer to how teams are playing against us, which means they have to sit back. I think he's trying to solve those problems because he knows how to do the home run stuff. But to win stuff, you've got to solve the problems that were asked of our team last year, which means we didn't win the league. And I think it's still early days. I think it's too early to panic. I'm a bit bored by the idea of Arsenal fans acting like we've got to set the whole club alight and people coming out.
I know, like, because you're wanting to win a title and you feel like because City keep winning, you have to keep pace with them. But in terms of like what I noticed about Arsenal that would worry me is I felt like they were giving the ball away in vulnerable positions, which wasn't what I seen a lot from them last season. Like the opening goal was just one of those things that can happen, but it could have happened again quite quickly after that. Like they seemed to switch off a little bit. And when I looked at Havertz getting subbed off, which there wasn't a lot contributed from him, in my opinion. And I'm still sort of wondering why. And I know you've given a good point as to why they might have bought him, but to me, that 3-man midfield without Havertz and with Partey in there is better without Havertz.
Yeah, but I think in a big game, having Partey, Rice, and Odegaard makes way more sense.
Yeah.
And I think when you're playing against these teams that are hard to break down, you need options against those teams. Where a lot of those smaller clubs, we were saying, like the West Ham game, the Southampton game, even the Everton game when Dyche's first game back in season last year, it was so clear that we just needed another approach, and we didn't have it. And I feel like the thing I like about Havertz is that he's technically a very good player. And there's something in his head that's happened, and it happens often when you go Chelsea, and that's not disrespect, it just is, that like you lose the edge that you may have. If Arteta can find it, there's a real player in there that gives us something different and can be dangerous. If he doesn't, we could find ourselves outside of the title race before we get our answer. I personally feel like right now, a Smith Rowe or just playing with that obvious centre midfield free would be way better than playing him. But I see what he's trying to do, and this is the best time to figure it out.
Would you say that Havertz is best role? And I'm not asking this in a way to get a reaction, but what is his best role?
So I feel like he's a second striker. So I think if you think about if we played 4-4-2, this is what I'm saying. Formation-wise, it doesn't necessarily add up. If you're playing a 4-4-2, you would play him as a second striker. In this modern era, those type of players don't necessarily have a home in these current formations.
They're a bit luxury, right?
They are. It's not even that they're luxury. It's just that we just don't play in a place where he has the ability to be as impactful. The number 10 role disappeared, and we watched how quickly Mata and Ozil, who were amazing players 3 years before, declined incredibly quickly. He's a little bit of that.
Do you not think why, though? Because having that extra man in the midfield and winning the midfield battle just became so important. Like Newcastle today, we're playing basically 3 centre midfielders midfielders. There is no number 10.
Yeah.
We can't afford it.
I would say that Odegaard is a number 10, is he not? Like, does
No,
he not play in that
he
creative
switches,
role?
doesn't he?
Yeah, but he's not a defensive midfielder, is he?
No. Odegaard is 100% a number 10. There's no question about that. What I think the question is that what happens on the other side when we have more of the ball than not, having like a Rice and Partey, almost like a double pivot, or even one of them playing a 6 is overkill. So it's just like, what can we do? So one of them playing a 6, one of them playing an 8 is overkill. So what can we do to give a different type of midfielder in that space and then be able to play in the half spaces? That is what Havertz can do, but his mind has to be up to it. You can't just ask him to do it when he's come from a bit of a rough season at Chelsea into this new system. It's going to take him.
Remember, though, he hasn't just come from a rough season at Chelsea. He also won a Champions League at Chelsea and then didn't do anything of note in the next season. I just think Arsenal fans are going to be... I think they're going to be waiting a long time for Kai Havertz to come good. I take it firsthand. He's not left and I'm bitter. We'll do better without Kai Havertz. It's one of those situations where you'll be waiting a long time to think, hold on, where does he actually play? And everyone says, yeah, but if you find his best position, okay, but then you're assuming that once you find that position, he's going to be a well beater all of a sudden. He hasn't done anything apart from individual moments like the goal in the Champions League final. But he hasn't done anything sustained to say that he's going to be a brilliant player even when you find the position he's best suited to.
I will say that if there is someone who's going to figure it out, it's Arteta. Or he just has to leave the country to go to a different
Do you think Arteta is more qualified to figure that out than a Thomas Tuchel who's won a Champions League than the sort of...
Yeah, they're completely different types of managers. And that's not even to say one's better than the other, but they're different types of managers. And I feel like this is what I'm saying, the kind of Pep Arteta mode of managing players and coaching them is completely different to the Mourinho, Tuchel type of way of doing it. And I feel like there's certain players who just suffer in those type of environments, and there are certain types that absolutely will thrive at Arsenal. So I feel there is an opportunity that we can get into his head, and he'll have more safety in an Arsenal squad to find that than it will do in a Chelsea team or any other team. So let's see.
Question about Arsenal generally. What went wrong against Fulham?
I think it's just a bit of that. I think it's still figuring things out at a time when you would want us just to be home running. I think it just takes time to figure out how we're going to play this year to not be found out as much as we were last year. Because yes, we would beat a Fulham last year, but then somewhere in the team, just a team that's resolute, that's going to outrun us, we really struggled against and just be difficult. So we need another way of playing. And if you figure it out now, a bit like how Man City do, they played around with their team all the way up until December. And then from December, they turned into something else.
You're not as pissed off as I thought you would, because that, to me, Fulham, A, should be beating them at home, B, 10 men. And also, not just 10 men, but at 2-2, you nearly concede in the last minute when Traore goes through. Like, it was a lack of concentration. There were certain things that I can excuse not winning the game, but there's certain things that I'm like, this isn't like Arsenal last season. There was a switch off there. Do you disagree? Or
I just think the point that I want to talk to Marvin about is how Arteta is playing players in a position that they aren't necessarily comfortable with. Like, for example, you had Kivior playing as a left back. He's more of a centre back, is he not?
He's a left centre back.
Yeah. So fair enough, he comes in the 3. Partey's better in the defensive midfield area. He's playing right back. Trossard is playing up front, and I understand why, because Gabriel wasn't fit. But again, he isn't a striker. Kai Havertz is playing as an 8. And we've just, as we've discussed, we're not really sure how he's doing it. So that felt to me, when I saw that team sheet, it felt to me there was a few sort of square pegs in round holes.
I think one of the things is that us as football fans, and even the media as well, have this need to understand based on the traditional positions that are on the pitch. And I think Pep Guardiola has made it very, very clear that those rules do not exist. You are there to do a particular job against a particular team in a particular system at a particular time. So Fabian Delph being left back for ages is like clearly the most bizarre thing ever, but it worked for them for so long because he was doing a particular job. And I just feel like sometimes when we start talking about Arsenal, like Partey is not a right back. And it's just like, if you watch the game, he was never at any point at right back. As soon as we got the ball, we went into centre midfield and he was driving the play. And then when we were defending, he went back out there to defend. And that was it. It's such a, and the thing is, I think for us watching the game is that the game has evolved so much that even our own understandings of what we think we know, we have to readdress it. And actually, the things that didn't work for Arsenal was that we had lapse in judgment on individual players, Zinchenko and Saka, which meant that we conceded goals, and that cost us at home, and it shouldn't happen.
It was just switch-offs. Like, when you look at the first goal, everyone switched off. When you look at the corner that they scored from, no one marked their man. Like, it was really schoolboy defending.
But doesn't that ask the question that we're seeing the same mistakes that sort of, made Arsenal unhinged towards the end of last season? Because that was what that was from. That was switch-offs. Against Southampton and against West Ham, you could say that was bad game management because you easily had the talent to beat both of those teams and were good enough too.
Like, if you send your players out and in the first minute they burst through, and this happened to us 3-4 times last year, and obviously happened to us this year, that's not an Arteta problem. That's the actual players on the pitch being the problem. And this is where I feel like what Arteta does need to do is be a lot more cynical with some of the players who aren't up on the levels. And it's like Saka, even, it's like, if you're making that mistake, cool, but then you now need to go and fix that on your own. If I give you the ball one time, at some point you got to beat two people when you put in the top corner. We don't think about that mistake.
Do you think the keeper was
That's
to
your
blame?
job. No, but I think it's he's a part of it as well, and I think that's why when Raya coming in is a really important thing. You need competition. Saka needs competition. He can't sit there and think every week I'm going to start because there's no one in my position.
I must admit, I was a bit like, priorities. Is a another keeper. It's a bit of a Pep Guardiola move to put pressure on your own goalkeeper. And some goalkeepers have came out and said it's a big mistake because once a keeper feels like you can't make a mistake, it's a different position to anywhere else on the pitch.
Yeah, but I think
to feel
Ramsdale
confident.
made mistakes last season at the end of the season also, just little errors when he's like clearing the ball out. He needed challenging in a way, and it's not always about coaching you with like, you can do it. Sometimes it's like, okay, look, I've told you what you need to do and what I expect from you. We have this person here in the wings. He's now here. No one was sitting there thinking Matt Turner's going to take over at any point, going to take over Ramsdale. So I think it's good. I think it's not just about timing and being like, oh, we should have got someone to put pressure on Saka first. It's what's available, what's on the market and what's realistic. So sometimes it's like, I'd rather deal with what's possible and rather than spunk a whole bunch of money on an attacker who really and truly won't challenge him. I'd rather try and energise Pepe.
It's a lot of money to spend on a replacement, on a backup. But what I will say is Fulham looked really good, and that Paulinho,
Paulinho.
What a fucking player!
Top player.
I think one thing with Arsenal last season, I think everyone would agree it was a surprise that they finished second, especially where we had them at the start of the season. We perceived them to have bottled the Champions League spots a little bit the season before, so it was a surprise they finished second. And again, whenever I'm predicting stuff or whenever I'm trying to work out how things might go myself, I'm always looking into the past. So I'll always look at things that have gone before, and I look at teams that surprised us by finishing second. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Man United team, he didn't last long after that. Mauricio Pochettino's Tottenham team, he didn't last long after that. Brendan Rodgers' Liverpool team, when Gerrard slipped, he didn't last long after that.
That's a good
so
point.
History would show that there are potentials that maybe that's the height Arteta goes to. And I know Arsenal fans that get their blood boiling by me saying it, but I'm just saying there is a chance that sort of thing could happen.
No,
we don't
I
see
Let's say in a year's time.
I don't think that's that wild.
In a year's time, if Arteta has got the chop, like just say for the sake of argument, we're all going to pinpoint that signing as that was where it all started to go wrong, right? Like bringing in a player of the Chelsea lad, sorry, what's his name? Havertz. When you bring in a player like that for that much money, it needs to go right. Like it's not like chump change, is it? So
No, but I think making that point isn't particularly crazy because it's based on historical data. What I'm saying at that particular time is I didn't see Brendan Rodgers at that time. It was still Mourinho and Pep. The question was he might be one of the big managers, but he never really delivered. And now he's back at Celtic, so it probably is never going to happen. But the reality is, I think with Arteta, he's a different type of manager. Like, and every single piece of feedback I've ever heard from any player that he tried to sign, anyone that's worked under him says he's a different animal. Like that's not what we were hearing from those managers at that time. So I feel that he will need to make these kind of mistakes as a manager. He probably was a bit idealistic in thinking Havertz is a technically brilliant player, and if I can get in his head, like dreaming a little bit, if this is the one time he dreams and gets it wrong, but after this he turns into a bit more of a savage, I'm here for it, because I think what happens afterwards, you start looking at players like Saka, Martinelli, and being like, either you're going to get me 25, 30 goals a season, or I have to find someone who's going to get it. Now you start talking about who's going to be there, who's going to compete with them. We really need a number 9, a proper one. We really need a new one.
Yep.
That's going to be a conversation, because that means Nketiah may not necessarily be here in a year's time. It means Jesus may not be here in a year's time. I feel like Gabriel has mistakes in him. So as much as we're saying we want him back in the team and don't go to Saudi, he has mistakes in him. So in that case, it's like, who should be there? Who's our Saliba number 2 to make us absolutely solid? Because Man City aren't playing. They got Stones and Guardiola. They're not playing around with any players.
And you're just about to sell Balogun as well, aren't you? You know, he could have been a potential option there as well.
I feel like for Arsenal, they need to recoup some money to finish doing some work and to bring back the net loss down for the season. He's the only one of the few players that has resale value, which I think is the reason why. I think if someone put in a bid this morning for 45 million for Nketiah or 50 million for Nketiah, I think he might let Nketiah go before, maybe. I don't know. So I feel like it's a bit of a shame to lose him, because he clearly was on a good trajectory, but I trust them so much in terms of what they've done so far until it literally implodes and we're back where we were.
It's a bit like Newcastle.
Yeah, I think you have to. People don't understand how bad it was when we had Lacazette, Pepe, Ozil, and Fajin Aubameyang up front, and we're looking at it being like, this could be as good as Liverpool. I remember, because we played Liverpool really early, and we had them 3 up front, and it was against Mane, Firmino, and Salah. We were like, they're basically the same. They could be as good. And the decline for all 3 of those players was so violent. Like, I'm willing to prepare. I'm prepared to just allow Arteta to do his things, but please stop making decisions that we feel we could be picking up points, because Man City are probably coming back being better than ever.
To give him credit, before we move on, Vieira looked great when he came on.
Yep, he did.
Changed the game. And yeah, actually, I'm going to bring the Pepe thing back in a bit. We'll get on to Man United, because his stats, when you compare Pepe's stats to Sancho and Anthony, you know, Pepe was the biggest flop ever. It's not good. No. Not for Sancho and Anthony. No. Okay, we're going to move on to Man United. I'm going to do some super chats. Big love to the chat. Thanks for everyone who's watching. People loving the show. Thanks very much. We have Foden won City the game and played 10 minutes. I think that's the point we're making. A lot of people saying Foden was sick. Obviously, he was sick, but not sick enough to not get on the game and change it. So how sick was he? I mean, does that make us all idiots? Thank you. Fuck me. God help us. Shout out to Ryan, who said, big fan of the kickoff and Joy fits the dynamic perfectly. Big love to Ryan. Thanks very much. When are we saying Joy on the Misfits cards? I'm actually going to be the agent.
Brian, you got the answer to that one.
20%. Missed that 20%. I've learned my lessons from the past.
You can
I'm actually going to make some money.
30% if you can get me Dean the Great.
I reckon. Do you know what it is, mate?
Call him out.
You'd smash it on Misfits, mate. I reckon. Definitely going to make that happen. So Manchester United, they won 3-2 against Forest yesterday. And I found that game so fascinating, because they played terribly against Wolves, but they won despite, they got the keeper. Keeper should have been given away a penalty. It didn't get given. They then performed just the same way against Spurs, but Spurs put it on them and found them out. And then they performed badly at the start of this game, but came back into it. The opening bit of the game where they went 2-0 down, it's the fastest I think they've ever conceded 2 goals in Premier League history. What were you making of that, lads?
I find it very, very hard to get a gauge on where I think Man United are at the moment. It's really, really difficult, because, like you say, you watch them one week, they're underwhelming. It depends whether you've got a half full or half empty mentality, because I look at the game against Wolves, for example. If you've got a half empty mentality, you'll look at that and you go, they're rubbish, and Wolves aren't great either, and they, held out until the 90-odd minute. But if you've got that half full mentality, you're going to go, do you know what? Even when they're not playing well, like against Wolves and like against Nottingham Forest, you might think, okay, they're still getting the results, and when they start to tick, maybe when Højlund comes in, maybe when the injuries ease up. But for me, there's quite a bit too much hypothetical sort of scenario.
My question is kind of, have they been found out? Because in 3 games in a row, they've not looked anywhere near what I thought they. I was saying they could maybe have a title challenge if things, if City shake or whatever. And last season, I mean, like, take the Wolves game, for example. They played last season. Rashford dug them out of it. When I watched this game, I thought, if Rashford and Bruno Fernandes don't play like they did today and maybe have a 6 or 7 out of 10 game and not, they were really on fire once they started coming back into the game, I thought Ten Hag, for a system-based manager, relies heavily on individual moments of brilliance. Eddie Howe does not rely on individual moments of brilliance the way Ten Hag does. And that's the problem with this game is coming into it, I'm thinking, okay, Wolves maybe overperformed against you, hard game, first game of the season, it can happen. Spurs actually better than we thought this season. All right, maybe we can let that go. But against Forest are the whipping boys, man. You put a nail in them straight away. To be 2-0 down. The fact that you made it a mountain to climb is my issue. It's you won the game, fair enough, but you're supposed to. But you're not supposed to make it look like a mountain. They made
and this is where I find it hard to, because we're talking about Arteta and Ten Hag often as like managers that have come into their teams. But the different thing about Ten Hag is that I don't look at Man United and feel like I think I know what he's trying to do with the team and the system.
Yeah.
I don't sit there and feel like that passage of play resembles something I've seen before, which is like I know what's going to happen. When they get the ball, it's quite laboured. And then they get it through, and it's like it is those individual brilliant moments where it's like Rashford gets through on goal, and then it's just like a goal. Like they did it against us, where I'm just like, I don't feel like we're losing this, but somehow they've got through on goal and they're scoring. It's like fine, but if I was a Man United fan, I wouldn't sit there and be optimistic about what they're doing.
So what I'm saying is they've got great players, world-class players in Rashford and Bruno Fernandes, or maybe world-class on his day. Rashford, Bruno is a world-class player in my opinion. But it's not a great system. And to that point, when your last man back in the first moment of a game is Marcus Rashford tracking back the opposition's attack, how the fuck does that happen? Do you know? And then you've got your new goalkeeper who's sat on his arse driving the fucking race car as a meme long before the shot takes place.
When we speak about individual performances and reliance on those performances as well, even say for Chelsea last season, individual performances and individual brilliance is the reason we didn't get relegated last season. Yeah. Individual brilliance is all well and good, but then you've got to go, okay, let's see how much consistency we can get there. So one of the reasons that I back Newcastle to finish fairly high up is, I think their individuals have a lot of consistency in what sort of performances they'll churn out. Whereas these Man United ones, they can give a 4 one week, they might give a 9 one week, but I don't see the consistency like you've got with a Newcastle, like you've got with an Arsenal. And they're the only two, apart from City, obviously, that I can really say where I'm like, okay, I think I know what I'm going to get from you every single week. With Man United, I could not tell you.
It's really interesting, isn't it? There's a bit of like negativity all around Man United, right? And I was looking at the stats around how well they're performing, and I looked at the second half of last season and included the 3 games that we've had thus far, right? They have the same amount of points as Arsenal in the second half of the season. So, we're all quite bullish on Arsenal and like their ability and their quality. And we're all quite negative on how well United have been playing and the system that they've been playing. But actually, they're equal in terms of overall points. And yes, look, you can say Man United didn't perform very well yesterday. The data actually says that they did all right. XG 3 XG. Lots of shots, lots of possession. Yeah, fair enough. They went 2-0 down very early, but again, overall performance, they got the win. And this is the key thing: is like sometimes as football fans we go, "Oh, I want to see a beautiful football. I want to see a passage of play here. I want to see something. I want to see a system here." Ultimately, we're in the business of getting points, right? And sometimes at Chelsea, I almost wish we were playing a certain way just to get the points, see out games, win games in a sort of a less than fashionable way. And we didn't do that last season. And ultimately, Man United, more than most teams, and actually second in the league only behind City, are doing that in the last 6 months.
I think we're ignoring all of the soft data around what we're just seeing. And then that's what creates the feeling around the football club. Because if it's just as literal as just like, oh, end of this last season, our points and their points were the same, we should be happy. What fans want to see is a plan, and they want to see that plan executed backstage as well as on the pitch as well. They want to feel like when they're linked with players, that player makes sense and those right players get executed. Then they get brought into the team and managed very well. And then they actually perform and the system is clear to everybody. So when that person's injured, it's like we know who should be replacing them. That's not the feeling that we have around Manchester United at this point. So that's where the question comes in. And they might be nicking it, but they've spent $1 billion.
The soft data is really important as well because first game of the season, that goalkeeper poleaxed the player in the box. Should have been a penalty, could have ended up 1-1. In this game, some people have been debating the sending off. I think last man back, he did hold on to him. I'm not really, but the Rashford penalty, like, was there contact? Yeah, but I think he was very lucky to get that penalty personally. And it was, again, contentious. So although they've got 2 wins from 3, when I look at the actual way the games have gone, I'm like, you're fucking lucky you've got 2 from 3.
Eric Ten Hag's start to life at Man United is actually comparable to Arteta's at Arsenal. You look at Arteta, came in, won a trophy straight away, very similar with Ten Hag. Obviously, Ten Hag got the top 4 finish in a season that I think, the standard going for those top 4 spaces wasn't as good as we've seen. Is there anything that you could look at Arteta's reign and say, after he won that trophy, he was given, 2 seasons where he was able to finish 8th, 7th in the table? Surely Ten Hag's not going to be given that luxury.
They're not the same in any way, shape or form, fundamentally because of how much money Manchester United spent and the squad that he inherited. We didn't have anything like that. If you look at the squad from then to now, there is no remnants from his first game in charge apart from Saka to this day. And so I feel like we were in a completely different space. But I also feel like the players that he has chosen to bring in, because if you remember, Arteta's first round of signings was Willian. So he made those mistakes and brought in those players that actually weren't going to adapt to what he wanted to do and give him attitude, and then he got them all out again. So he had his moments, but if you're going to beg for 80 million for Anthony and then he can't assist or score goals, then that's on you. That's your choice that you fought for him. So I think there's a bit of that.
Oh my God, Almiron! Fucking hell, man!
We need to do a whole video about Almiron reactions because it would
I
be
didn't want that to be him.
amazing.
I just think
Fucking hell.
He's got to hit the target.
Professional footballer. Jesus Christ, man.
The ironic thing is, he could have took a touch.
He could not.
He could have had a touch there.
He
He
could
could
have
have
a
set
cutler
himself
and a
up.
tea and toast and fucking then finished it.
Do you know what? To sort of carry on pouring praise on Newcastle here, we're talking about the job that Ten Hag's done with his signings and with the players that were already there. Look at what Eddie Howe's done with the signings he made and the players like Joe Linton that were already there. And then you compare it, Eddie Howe coming in and bringing in Bruno Guimaraes and a few of the other players he did. And you look at Ten Hag coming in and he's brought in Anthony. He's brought in a couple of other names that haven't been perceived to hit the ground running. And then when you look at the players that were already there, okay, Ten Hag didn't sign Jadon Sancho, but he was signed very recently before that for very big money. So if you look at the job that...
You're supposed to improve the players you have, which is what Eddie Howe has
That's what he's done.
unequivocally done. And when you look at what Ten Hag has done with Sancho or Anthony, well, let's use the stats. Nicolas Pepe at Arsenal, 112 games, 27 goals, 21 assists. Right? Not actually that bad.
Yes, that surprised me. It's more decent than I thought it would be.
So 112 games, 27 goals, 21 assists. Sancho and Anthony combined 127 games, 20 goals, 9 assists. So in terms of goal involvements in more games, they've got less than 30 goals and assists, whereas Pepe in less games has got nearly 50.
Yeah, for 80 million more as well. Look, I think those things are good to contextualise because sometimes, like, we even with us as Arsenal fans, we're looking at Pepe and we want and needed him to really carry the mantle and be a much bigger player, and he wasn't. And obviously, every mistake that happens at a club does get scrutinised. But I think the amount of players that have gone Man United for big fees and have not made it, I keep talking about there's a massive culture problem. One of the other things that we don't talk about, which Arteta and Edu and Vinay has done, is create an actual culture, an actual identity, and got the fans singing again, got the Hale End moving again. Like even Jack Wilshere being at the club and doing so well with his under 18s. Like there's little things that are happening which I don't see at Man United. The Man United keep selling their youngsters for £1 million or for less money than they actually got for them. It's like, where's the resale value in your development team? Why is Elanga only 15 million? He went from being in your team to being 15 million to Nottingham Forest in 18 months. That's just mismanagement.
But that's another huge
Can we talk
problem
about
they
Casemiro? Because he's a really interesting one, because for periods last season, I'd watch him in a game and I think, world class, wow. Especially early on. This season, he's definitely looked miles off it. He looks unfit. He doesn't look switched on.
Missed the City yesterday.
Yeah. And look, that's not his job, so fair enough. But the amount of times we've seen him carelessly give the ball away and in bad positions, not tracking players, and just look not at the races at all. And then you've paired him up with Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes, and we were talking to Babs about this, and he made a good point about how they're not they're too like for like Bruno and Mason Mount in that they love bombing forward. They leave you exposed a little bit in the DM role. It's not like one of them goes, I'm going to be the guy to pair up with Casemiro, and then you go. They both want to bomb forward, and they're both going to give the ball away.
That three doesn't work.
Yeah,
that three does not work.
It's not a well-balanced three, and you've also got Casemiro on 350 grand a week, who is 31 years old and looks like he's aging very quickly out of nowhere. So, looking at Mason Mount, I don't want to write him off completely because I have been a bit of a fan of his for a long time, and when he is played as the Bruno Fernandes, I do think it works. But can it work alongside a Bruno Fernandes with a guy behind you who is leaking goals and looking aging?
I think we saw yesterday it looks better with Christian Eriksen there.
It does. It looks more balanced immediately. Yeah.
I think they're crying out for a proper DM to sit alongside Casemiro, take some of the defensive pressure away from him, allow Bruno to be the number 10, and then you can talk about playing as we did for Chelsea, and he's done so for England as well. Think about putting Mason Mount as one of the wing areas. I mean, they're really struggling for wingers at the moment. I think Mason Mount, and this might be a controversial one, but I think he might do better on the right-hand side than an Anthony.
I agree.
So I do think when we're judging Ten Hag, and obviously we can talk about transfers and
he's re-signed Johnny Evans, by the way. Just to throw that out there.
Big
transfer. Big deal.
Let's be honest. Like, while he has a part to play, there, as we know in modern football, it's all about the recruitment structure, directors of football, etc. And so, you know, they need to support him. And yes, they've paid a lot of money. He's
the one who's telling them, though. He's absolutely has a massive hand in it.
He is telling them. But ultimately, the commercial and sort of like business people at Man United have failed people like Ten Hag in that they've done and paid over the odds for players that they shouldn't have paid over the odds for. They've signed the wrong players.
Ten Hag's request, though, wasn't it?
Well, if he wants Anthony, a player that he's worked with, fair enough, right? But they potentially overpaid,
and it's also correlated with the fact that they're not bringing in any money. You look at the players.
Yeah.
You look at everyone's very quick to go at Chelsea for FFP, and rightly so, probably. But you look at Man United; they bring players in for big money. They don't get anything.
But they're not smart in the business sense of like take Harry Maguire for example. That whole scenario is one of the worst transfers of all time, not just because he didn't work, but because of how they've handled him in realising that he's not worked. The whole world knows they are desperate to get rid of him. The fact that they re-signed Johnny Evans said that they were anticipating he wouldn't be there and they needed someone who was happy to sit on the bench. And to now have him basically have them by the throat and going, it's 9 million or I'm not going anywhere is mental.
Remember when they signed Harry Maguire as well? Sorry, when they signed Harry Maguire, it was a bit like, oh, you've just looked at what Liverpool did with Van Dijk and the fact that they spent big on a centre-back. He came in, had a really good season. Man United go and do it. Man City last season signed a young striker called Haaland. This season, Man United go and sign Højlund. It's like it's just like, is there any like?
They're copying the homework.
Yeah,
but it's obviously not the same, is it? It really isn't. And
I think what's going to be really shocking for all of us is when this takeover happens and it goes through, because it will eventually go through. Whether it's this
October now.
If it's now or if it's next summer, when that takeover happens, United are going to be unlocked as a force, and we are going to be, as all rival fans, we are going to be incredibly worried about them, because once they have some financial might about them and they have some recruitment experts that are actually good at their job, then they're going to start getting the players in and they'll be a real force.
Yeah, but the way football's going, by that point, Newcastle are going to be going full throttle. Yep. By which point, by the time Man United are able to invest in their squad and turn things round, another club will be rumoured to be getting took over.
They can outspend Newcastle by 5 times.
Yeah. I'm not disputing that, because the infrastructure of what the club can do. But the problem is their net spend is going to be so shocking because of how bad things have been handled up until that point. They're going to be so deep in the minuses of net spend. It's going to be a nightmare.
Best commercial revenue in the league by a mile, so they'll be fine. From an FFP perspective, they'll be absolutely fine.
Well, I agree, but in terms of the damage being done currently, in terms of the damage being done currently, it will take them a little while to catch up on all fronts. In terms of they could always do a Chelsea thing, but even that isn't guaranteed.
But like, what's the core of Manchester United? What are you keeping? If you went through their 11, what are you saying that we can build a team around this?
Yeah, Marcus Rashford and Bruno.
Varane.
Varane before that.
Varane would be gone before.
Varane would be in Saudi next year.
I don't even think Rashford is even someone you can build a team. I think he's a really important component. You can't build a team around Marcus Rashford. I'm talking about the spine. Who
Bruno.
are you looking at?
That's it.
I think he has a terrible attitude. I feel like his attitude is him being captain of Manchester United is a part of the symptom
You
as
hate
to
him,
why.
don't you?
You know what's so weird, yeah?
Marvin
Is that
hates
I'm not so binary that I can't enjoy players from other teams. Yeah, there's players that I just can enjoy, but I just think Bruno is such a whiner. He's such a miserable,
but let's be real.
bad attitude to have.
I hate him as well, but if he isn't there yesterday, they lose. Like,
No.
he is the difference.
There's something about him going forward that is compelling.
Yeah.
He clearly his output of goals and assists, but as a player, as an attitude in that team, being captain of Manchester United tells me it's a symptom of something going wrong. Roy Keane would wring his neck. If he was captain of the team, he wouldn't be able to survive.
Now, mate,
yeah, but I feel like you look at other people's captains, you look at other leaders in other people's teams, and you just think, I see how you're a leader.
I'll tell you what, they need
example.
this. This is the thing. We're judging Manchester United now as a complete team without seeing what Højlund brings to the table, because with Rashford having a good foil, even just a big lad who can take the take the attention away. Sorry, we're seeing the stats here. Newcastle had 4 shots to Liverpool 0 the second half. For someone to just take the attention away from Marcus Rashford and to get him more free down that left side, that could help really unlock the full potential of Manchester United. We might see teams a little bit more scared to press forward and to get on top of them in games. So that might change everything.
But just very quickly, if we just to identify it, you still got to replace Anthony, because whatever you say, he's not going to come good. You got to look at Casemiro, because that's not a long-term option. Mount really should be on the right wing, but he's not. But what position he's playing, they got to figure that out. Their fullbacks still are not top level. They got to figure that out. And Varane is probably in decline, if not leaving soon. There's about 6 to 8 positions that they've got to consider, and that's not an easy thing to do and to gel, especially if you don't have a system to then put it all into. So I just feel they're in a bigger trouble than they identify, and money isn't the only thing. They've had a problem with their inner workings as a club for so long. Like what Cristiano said in that interview, I'll be so embarrassed if that was an Arsenal feedback. If like my jacuzzi hasn't been updated and the food is outdated and the facilities aren't good, you're Manchester United.
That's the Glazer problem.
And going back to that is, and going back to what you were saying earlier about systems versus individuals. When Ten Hag was brought in and Ten Hag ball was spoken about, and Man United fans were very excited about being a front foot team and keeping possession. We've not really seen that enough. Like, yes, in some games they do dominate, and they dominated Forest, but they were down to 10 men, and Forest scored very early. I think that actually psychologically kind of didn't help Forest. They sat back, but it's not enough of the Ten Hag style being implemented. It's actually quite reminiscent to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a lot of the time, the counter-attack that he played, and I do wonder what difference we would be seeing if Ollie was given that 400 million. If Ollie was given all of these extra players, would it be that much? Would it be worse? Would it be the same, or would it be?
I think it'd be about the same, and this is why I say Ten Hag has to put his identity on the culture and the style of play in a way that he currently hasn't done. He has to make requests about what the environment that these players are coming into, because big players come into Manchester United underperforming, it can no longer be a thing. You look at the Lukaku's, the Pogbas, the Di Marias, these are hundreds of millions of pounds worth of players, Maguire, and something happens, whatever it is, that they just do not perform. That has to be addressed at its core before you start talking about bringing in more top players to come and play where and do what.
Jose Mourinho said that one of his biggest accomplishment was finishing second with Man United, yeah? Ten Hag finished third. Not far, not too much in between it. Yeah. I think that there's a very strong potential that we're sort of shining the magnifying glass on Ten Hag here and looking at Ten Hag's job and what he's doing. It runs a lot deeper than that. The problems that Cristiano Ronaldo said are the core of everything going wrong with the club. They're contributing factors here.
There were 7,000 fans that sat in after the game at Old Trafford protesting the Glazers and wanting them gone. And those fans have wanted them gone for years and years and years. And if it is October, I think they're all going to celebrate it. And we could see, this is what I'm saying, we could see a very different Man United after that takeover happens.
Yeah, I agree.
It'd be a shame, wouldn't it?
But you look at Newcastle, before anyone was brought in, before even Steve Bruce was sacked, I think, you see how much of a buzz the atmosphere and everything was improved once that takeover went through.
It is like a dark cloud over a club, and I do empathise with Man United fans for that reason, and Liverpool fans. And it's a shame because, Newcastle fans, I still see us getting hounded for who our owners are. And especially by Liverpool fans and Man United fans. And I read these sort of tweets when articles are written about our owners, and I'm like, and none of you worked out how fucking hard it is to get rid of bad owners. Like, we had Mike Ashley for 14 years. When you talk about a protest, our protests were better than anything you've seen at Old Trafford. No offence, but 7,000 fans, it doesn't compare to what Newcastle were doing when we wanted to get rid of Mike Ashley. We have no say. No one does. So I think when I read these comments, I'm like, don't act like when you guys all get bought out by massive mega money countries or companies or whatever, you're not going to celebrate and think, God, at least we're going to see some good fucking football.
Yeah, but I think that whole debate is disingenuous when rival fans talk about oil money or whatever, because every single one of those teams was biting at the bit when they thought that Qatar was going to come and buy Liverpool, when they're very close to doing the Man United deal. Arsenal have a huge financer, but they ultimately don't necessarily lean on him in that way. But I think they've had a good infrastructure for a minute, which is holding them. But now they're spending more money than ever. If you're not at the table spending money, especially behind the scenes and on the pitch, like, you're going to get those.
This is the only
protests.
reason I give Ten Hag criticism is when I look at his side and I look what he's achieved. Oh, Gordon.
Oh,
Just
wow.
why-
What a run by.
I wanted that.
He's been man of the match in my opinion.
he has.
He's run them ragged, and he's the one who looks more likely to create something. But I am ready for Barnes to come on for Almiron,
legs.
who is terrible. And to be honest with you, Newcastle have.
We double kicked it.
I think Newcastle should have done more against 10 men. I think Liverpool have done actually really well to keep this to 1-0, and they're still in this game, especially with a player like Mo Salah on the pitch and some of their other attacking threats. I think Liverpool have really worked their socks off to keep this, keep themselves in the game, and I respect that.
But what I've seen from Newcastle is that when they get the ball after a bit of intensity, they're just saying slow down. And so it sounds like they're trying to do a bit of game management and just keep the ball and see if they can nick another one, because they're much more physical than Liverpool are. Liverpool are going to get tired running around in circles and just hoping for a mistake. I think it could be some good game management from them.
Tonali, I'm learning more and more about his game, because like you see the first game, you're like, all right, he was man of the match, and it was against Villa. But what's one game, Moussa Sissoko had the best debut I've ever seen against Chelsea. Scored 2 goals. I'm like, fucking hell. And it wasn't that way for the rest of it. So I've learned my lesson. But Tonali looks class. Like he's an eloquent footballer on the ball. He's so like, the way his little touches here and there, he just oozes class in everything he does. So.
When Chelsea played AC Milan last season, most of the eyeballs were on Rafael Leao for AC Milan. That's the one player you were looking at and thinking, God, he could go on to be a world beater. I remember looking at Tonali and thinking, God, this boy's class, isn't he? But because he had that affiliation with AC Milan, born in Milan, you never thought he was going to move. And like we were touching on before, when he did move, people were going, yeah, he's not going to have the right attitude for it, though. You think he's going to enjoy it up in Newcastle? And it's like, yeah, mate, he will.
Obviously, Bruno was the guy last season, and he was the one where all the attention was on him, and he was, the best well-rounded footballer we had in years. But Tonali looks like he's just as good. Like what I'm watching, I'm amazed by some of the things he does. So
I've always said that Italian midfielders always struggle, especially Italian players in general.
Italian players, not just midfielders.
In the Premier League. I think apart from Zola, there's very, very Jorginho, which is a technicality. It's always really like a real struggle to get top players performing. So the fact that you've got him out of AC Milan in the first place and he looks good. He's
I think part of the reason is we've never had the best Italian footballers over here. We've gotten some of them, but Francesco Totti and them, they didn't come here, so we didn't get to see. Whereas, Tonali is the most expensive player ever bought from Italy.
Massive
Italian
disrespect to Balotelli. Massive disrespect. What a player.
Oh no, Mo Salah's in. Good tackle. Yes.
Shaw.
Who was that? Shaw. Unbelievable.
Botman.
Good in, son.
It's
Proper
corner.
defending.
Do you know Botman's the only one to ever make Haaland's the only. Something was about like Haaland didn't score in 2 games and they were both against Botman or something last season. Something like that.
Wow.
He pocketed him, man. That guy. Sorry, what I was saying was basically about Ten Hag is just that I think the players he's got, the performances could be better. That's it. That's all I can say, really.
What you want to do is you want to see an identity of a group of players that you feel like, all right, this is the group that we're going to build of. Arsenal, it was Emil Smith-Rowe and Saka, which is 2. two players, but you want to know who they are and be able to say, actually, we're going to build off of you and start to. I don't even know who that is for Manchester United. I love Lissandro. I hate the fact that he's at Man United. I would have loved him to be at Arsenal. He looks like an absolute headache, and I think he's brilliant. But I don't know if you build a team necessarily around him per se. So it's all kind of up in the air.
I've got a little one from the chat here. Mark has said, just on improving players, maybe we go one by one and see if we agree with this. So he's saying that Dalot, he's improved. Yes or no?
Possibly.
I mean,
To what level we don't know.
I don't think as significant as you could go. He's done a good job with Dalot though, didn't he? I don't think you've got had any Man United fan in the pub.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but like when you say it, I'm like, was he ever bad? Is he great
I
now?
think he's got better. I think he's got better.
I would make more noise for Wan-Bissaka than I would do for Dalot.
Wan-Bissaka is the next one. I thought he's looked really good, but that's very interesting because they were about to sell him.
Yeah.
So
they're trying to swap him.
But then he hasn't. Wan-Bissaka hasn't improved areas of his game that he wasn't already perceived to be quite good in. The thing is, he can't go forward.
They got him playing and they got him confident again, which is something. But you're right, he's end product.
But if we're saying improving, have we just got him back to the level we saw of him when he was at Palace?
Yeah.
I didn't actually think Wan-Bissaka was ever bad.
No.
Like I think he had a bit of a period where he wasn't as good, but
I think there's a lot of pressure on him because he wasn't producing enough going forward, and I think that impacted his defender.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's one of the best one-on-one defenders.
So
in the Premier League,
who else has he improved?
He said that Shaw he's improved.
No.
You don't think so?
No, I think Shaw was good. I think quite a few of these are players that we're naming and we're going.
This is one of the most expensive young defenders ever
Look at
signed.
Shaw for England, you know. So are we saying that Southgate's massively improved Shaw? Shaw gets in ahead of Chilwell,
I think he
and
plays better for England than he does for me.
yeah, I wouldn't say he has massively improved Shaw.
I'll do two more. Rashford. He said that he's improved. Obviously, Rashford had
a great run of form last season, so we can't deny that.
He had a great run of form that isn't currently his best ever season. So he has had a season where he's hit them heights before.
He also, like, if we're being honest, like people were raving about Marcus Rashford last season, saying like this is the best season ever, and he's going to become that guy now. And I actually really like the guy, and I'm not trying to say that isn't the case, but he got outscored by Callum Wilson. It wasn't like he set the world on fire. He just had but I think we have to allow this for the argument.
Context is everything. I think what went in Marcus Rashford's favour is we sort of thought that we had seen him fizzle out.
Yeah,
maybe he wasn't going to get back to
those
heights.
He definitely came back.
Ten Hag definitely improved him, but I wouldn't say he improved him beyond what he was already capable of.
Yeah, that's true.
The last one is Sancho. He's improved.
Oh, fuck off.
What?
Fuck off. This cunt.
No, he did.
Is this a joke?
I haven't had that.
Josh is winding us up. This fella did not say that.
Mark Suter, you've said it in the chat. Sancho was improved under.
I'll tell you what, Ten Hag Sancho's way better than Dortmund Sancho, isn't he? Like, he's so...
I think that's the point. The point that you made really well is great managers take players beyond what we've ever seen them before. Example: Joe Linton. Boom. Simple. And Alex Ferguson took players, and Pep does it. He takes you beyond the ceiling that you previously had. I think the Rashford debate is a fair one because I think even though he's scored more goals before, but you could argue his best overall football was last season.
No, but he didn't play well. That's the thing. The biggest complaint about Rashford is that going back. And for large part of the
give
game,
him something.
No, but for large part of the games, he disappeared, and so they were like, "Where have you been?"
But generally speaking, I don't think that Ten Hag is taking anyone's ceiling higher than what we've seen before. Arguably, so.
So can we flip it then? Players that Ten Hag has failed to improve, because straight away I'm saying Harry Maguire. I sort of thought that maybe when Harry Maguire came in, we might see Ten Hag take him out of the limelight short term. But I actually said after that, I think that Harry Maguire will come back in the Europa League matches, do a good performance, and maybe actually get his way back into the team. That never ended up happening. Jadon Sancho, I'd very much say the complete opposite to what that fella said, was that I don't think he has improved Sancho at all, and I think he's done all he can to try and do it. He sent him away at one point, which in modern day football might be sent. It's becoming a little bit more common, but that's pretty much unheard of. Going back to just send it, he's not injured, nothing. Send a player away to get his head right. It's a good thing, but that ultimately didn't improve him and make him into it. He's tried him in a couple of different positions. He's tried him as a 10 where we hadn't seen him before. So there's another one that I'd say a player that he hasn't really improved. Obviously, we know De Gea left the club. So I think there's arguments on both sides, and I don't want to come out and say, no, he can't improve players.
Anthony Martial.
There's players that you can say that he definitely hasn't improved, that a lot of people were hoping that he could get the best.
But you know what? For me, a way of improving a player would have been like going to Bruno and just being like, I think Bruno goes missing for a large part of the games. And so like finding a way for him to be more involved and play would be like you taking him to another level, because I'd rather lose 10 or 15 goal contributions, but I know that he can control my midfield, control the game for me. If that's even possible for him, I don't even know. But like that's what I mean by improving. It's not always just more output. It's about changing the game so that they have a much bigger impact on the overall team. And I think he just hasn't done that yet with enough people.
Yeah, I think we'll give him a break.
We'll give him a break. Yeah.
Keep trying.
Should we just have a quick review of the game so far? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Newcastle are in cruise control, but it's only 1-0, which has got me worried. We just made a triple substitution there. So Bonds, Longstaff and Callum Wilson are now on. I'm just worried that we haven't put the nail in the coffin, because against Liverpool, you know, they are so potent in front of goal. It really does worry me. Like if they just get one chance, that's all these lads need. They're so good, and I'd be furious if for Liverpool now, if they get a draw at this, that's a win.
Don't worry, you've got the engine of Almiron still on the pitch.
Fuck
you
me.
know,
The fact that Almiron's still on is absolutely mental.
I think the only thing you're lacking here is that second goal, because you've been pretty dominant. You've been in control. You might have wanted to be a little bit more creative, seeing as they've only got 10 men. But I would actually say, you look at the Premier League over the last week or so, Chelsea showed it with the match against West Ham. Obviously, yesterday, Arsenal against Fulham. When a team goes down to 10 men, it can be trickier.
I think Liverpool have battled hard. What I will say is they've been surprisingly... I think they've been... It's a tricky one when you're down to 10 men, innit? Like, you've got to be cautious. You don't want to open up completely, but you still want to have the odd attack and be in the game. And I think that they're trying to find that balance, and it hasn't quite happened for them. They've been really respectful of Newcastle, which is saying a lot, but they've got a... long ball over the top there.
Do you worry about Nick
desperate.
Pope in that position? Because he's had a few.
He's had one big mistake there, and I think it sticks in the mind. And I do worry a little bit about Pope, but overall, he's a top goalkeeper. I do think we should be looking at. It's one of those later down the line, though.
Should have brought in David Raya as competition.
Should have brought Kepa.
Yeah,
You can have him at the end of the season if you want.
If you want, yeah. You could have Cucurella as well if you want.
Let's have a whinge. Let's have a whinge about referees.
Oh,
Kieran Trippier's right in the face of Jota for diving. Let's have a whinge about the referees, right? Mike Dean, for a start, came out with his comments about, well, he is a mate, and that didn't go down too well. But apparently, that's what I refer to all of the guys who I'm working with as. Just don't worry about it. It's fine. Even if they're not my real mates, they're all mates on the day. Like, you're all my mates, lads. Don't worry about it. So yeah, there's basically allegations of, like, you know, corruption there, basically of you know, if you're not acting in a true way, depending on what your true opinion is, for whatever reason, it's corruption. It doesn't have to be, you know, some seedy reason that you've been paid off. Almiron's getting in. Off the ball!
That would have been brilliant.
he's rubbish, Brian. He's absolutely
To be fair,
rubbish.
that was a good run. That was a good run. But he's fucking frustrating because...
This was a brilliant run.
But you've got to
From
think,
the right-hand side,
you've
cuts
got
the
to think,
sides.
No, you've got to think, right?
On his left.
3 chances he's had today, which are really good chances. It should be 2-0. If they score here...
Do you think he suffers because of how he looks while he's playing football? Like, it's just like his face looks like he doesn't care as
Do you know what he looks like? He looks like a Labrador that's just happy to see you when you come in from work. He's got that look about him. He doesn't look like an intelligent man, and he doesn't play football like one either.
Oh, wow.
He's excitable.
Do you know what it is that I watch Moneyball, and you know there's a point where they lose their top 3 players or something, and they're like, we got to find replacements, and they're like, he swings funny or he runs funny, and you just like, that does play a bit of a role in all of us, isn't it? When we look at him, he just looks. I think that's why Grealish picked on him.
Yeah, I Grealish got stuck into him. Go on.
Handball.
No, it's not.
Was it
No,
not?
it's not.
Oh, I saw a little...
Just to
I
be
know
clear,
what you mean. It was hand-eyed, but it didn't.
we don't condone people bullying people on what they look like. We talk about you at the content of your character and how you play on the day.
Exactly.
Actually, fuck it. You know, we'll do the refs in a minute because I want to talk about Chelsea.
Who's Kwanzaa?
I want to talk about the Chelsea lads.
I think that's a religious holiday. Sorry.
2 games. West Ham, you lost 3-1. Then you come back, beat Luton quite convincingly. How are you feeling about the season generally with 2 big results like that being completely opposite?
I think I look at the performances of Man United so far and the performances of Liverpool so far, and it makes me quietly confident. Do I think that Chelsea are going to push a challenge for the league or anything like that this year? No. But I do think that because of where Man United are at this moment in time and where Liverpool are at this moment in time, and also the fact that, look, Spurs have started really well. Yeah, they've started good, but they are Spurs and they probably will slip away, in my opinion, at some point when it comes to challenging for the top four. I see Spurs maybe somewhere around 6th, 7th. So I look at the team so far. Also, you know, you've got Brighton. They were off to a barnstormer and they dropped points against West Ham yesterday. And I think that at the minute in time we're at, we've got as good a chance as any. That's not me saying Chelsea are the favourites out of any of these teams to secure top 4 football, but I think we've got as good a chance as any.
So first of all, what went wrong against West Ham?
Poor game management, really. I think if you actually look at the way we played, and I would say the way we played in all the games, whether it's the draw, the loss or the win, the consistent thing there is the way that we played, the way that we tried to create opportunities. You know, the way that we kept possession. Obviously, our possession stats are 10% higher possession this season than last season. And the creativity speaks for itself. We actually have got creativity rather than just moving the ball sideways passes and waiting for something to fall in our lap, which ultimately last season never really did. So I think that the signs I'm seeing from the way we're playing would lead me to suggest we're going to have a massively, you know, better season than last one. Whether that is enough that we then push on to, you know, finish in that top 4, I'm not too sure, but I'd give us just as good a chance, if not better than anyone.
Go on, in the box. Bonds
is on the left-hand side in the box.
What the fuck is that, you fucking moron? What is it about our wingers? What the fuck was that? Pass the fucking ball, you greedy bastard. Callum Wilson screaming at him, and rightly so. He's in the middle. It's a carbon copy of the Aston Villa game. Square it, it's a goal. It's 1-0. This is Liverpool, man. We're not playing mugs. Fucking hell, man. I've been crying on for this lad to get a chance, and he's been shite there, like. Fucking prick. Oh, God. And
they're in here. Jota's going through.
Nah.
That's actually really good football from Darwin Núñez. And I never thought I'd say that today.
Harsh.
So in terms of Raheem Sterling,
Yep.
right, we were talking about him earlier this season, needs to have a good season. It was a flop last season for the amount of money he was getting every week. He definitely had a couple of goals against Luton, looked better in that game. Jamie Carragher, I was listening, because you were at the game, I was in the pub, right, and I heard him go, "This is the real Raheem Sterling." I was like, it's fucking Luton, man. What the fuck do you want from him? Of course he can score against them. But am I being harsh? Are we seeing a resurgence of him this season that is a different level to last season?
Yeah, Raheem Sterling has even come out and said that Mauricio Pochettino had words of him and he said he wanted him to get back to what he used to do, which is drive the ball forward, take players on. And I do think that there's a weight to the argument that when you come out of this Pep Guardiola system, it can take you a while to get back to the sort of player that was able to express himself without so much worry. You look at the competition for places in any team that Pep's at, whether it's this Man City team or teams gone by he's managed, there's always massive competition for places. And there's always the fact that if you don't do the exact job he asks of you, you're not going to get played or he's going to drop you or whatever. And when you look at Raheem Sterling now, he came in, it was a bad season for everyone. That's not to say that he shouldn't have performed better, but it wasn't a great time that he came into.
No way. Darwin Núñez is in. He scored.
Oh, my God. Brian was just talking about having to finish the game off. They had the chance with that shot from Barnes to make it 2-0. And Darwin.
Of all people, it's the player I've been saying is actually good that doesn't get enough credit for Liverpool. And he's proven a lot of people who say shit wrong. He's proven me right against my team.
What?
Do you know what this is? Bad game management 101. And you know what this comes back to? What did I say about the Manchester City game? I said Newcastle lack killers. We lack killers. We have nice footballers. But when you are talking about Miggy Almiron, who is basically a waste of a shirt at times in front of goal, he is not a killer. And against top teams, like Manchester United when we played the Carabao Cup final, Rashford was a killer. Darwin Núñez there, for all the people who have called him out, he was a killer there. One chance in this whole game, he's just come on, bang, goal. Miggy Almiron's had 4 great chances, blasted them wide. And you know what? Fucking Jurgen Klopp, that bastard, I'm fucking sick of him. The whingy little bitch is going to love this, and I've got to sit there and look at his fucking pearly whites again.
I'll raise your hopes ever so slightly. Liverpool have a very excitable team, and I can see Liverpool going full throttle to try and win the match now, being that they've got 10 men, and one of the men at the back can't defend to save his life.
This is a lesson. This is a lesson learned, mate. This is another lesson. We got a lesson against City, and this is another lesson where you have to be clinical in front of goal. If we want to go to that next level, look, I said, look, Foden, a different level. We don't have a player like that. But they're down to 10 men. We've had all game to put this to bed, and we haven't bothered. And now Liverpool have got to win here. 1-1 for them at 10 men for the majority of the game is a win. This is pathetic from Newcastle. It's not good enough. And if we want to repeat a top 4, you can't gift teams like 10 men a 1-1 draw at St James's.
Well,
Fucking annoying.
As a fan of someone who did do this yesterday, I do feel that it's like, first and foremost, I think with the added extra time that they have now put into the game, I would have way more confidence.
Look at this. Look at what you're saying, though, Mov. Look, consistently, right? We are a team that operates based on pace, on running teams off the park. We have been slow as fuck in the second half, and again, we're giving silly opportunities away.
3-on-3.
Yeah, but it's a different beast, yeah. When you're, oh my lord, it's a much different.
Wow, that was close.
Shoot,
Szoboszlai. Wow, they're putting the pressure on here. They are going for the second goal.
But you know what? I think it's hard for Newcastle to break teams down when everyone sits behind the ball because they don't have players that can unlock.
Bingo. The reason why we've won so many games last season is because people went toe to toe with us and we blew them away. Pep Guardiola said after the game last time, we didn't want to do that with them. We wanted to control the game and stop Newcastle from blowing us away because that's all we can do.
Yeah.
We don't have a Phil Foden. We don't have a magical player who's going to unlock this game. We're trying to pass the ball quickly and run at you quickly because we've got the same style that Klopp used to have. But when we come up against teams who do sit back, it's a different game altogether.
And that's the mistake that he had.
Look
as well.
at Bruno,
Klopp,
man. Fucking hell, mate.
Klopp really struggled to like break down the teams when they sat back and didn't want to go toe to toe.
We don't have a number 10. We don't have a player in there who can do that.
I was saying actually yesterday that I found it bizarre that no other team went and got Madison. Like I watched Madison play. And
Newcastle were linked.
Mate, you're doing a lot right now. You're doing a lot.
I just
really
gave you the answer, the £40 million
mate,
answer.
This hurts. Because right now, if you're looking at what we've bought, Maddison is exactly what we needed. And I mean, he's performed amazing for Spurs. It's so frustrating.
How much did you spend on Barnes?
40.
About the same. 35, they got him for 40.
Yeah, look, I think Liverpool could have done with him as well. I'm surprised that there's a lot of players teams that needed a centre midfielder. I think Chelsea obviously clearly went and rebuilt their whole team.
This is fucking
and the fact that no one went and got them.
This is fucking criminal.
It's bizarre.
This is absolutely fucking criminal.
He's gone straight into Spurs and basically is now their best player.
Yeah, I think isn't he vice captain?
Rightly so. Rightly so. He's been immense. I mean, you watch him play. He was running things. He was coming into a defensive midfield position yesterday. He was running things.
This is embarrassing.
I think that's the part where I think sometimes when things happen in the Premier League, I'm just like, I don't quite know what was happening for why no one picked him up. But for him to end up at Tottenham means that he could have gone somewhere else.
This was a game I really wanted to win, right? Because Klopp is such a shithead these days. I was really looking forward to rubbing it in. And of all people, a player Klopp doesn't even rate as the one who scored the goal. A player Klopp spent all that money on and has basically fucked them off for the junk minutes. And for him to get on, and now Botman's down. Oh, this is just getting worse and worse.
Can we have a brief interlude to just talk about Liverpool's reaction to going a man down? Obviously, losing Van Dijk is a very difficult thing to recover from. Gomez comes on, and they've had to battle for over half the game. And to get a result up in Newcastle would be a very, very good
do you know what I was
performance.
thinking? I'm a bit like, you're trying to suss out teams at the minute. You said this earlier, like, you're not really sure what you're going to get. We're still working teams out. The mental tenacity of Liverpool, I have to take my hat off because they've really dug in. We're bringing Paul Dummett on. Fuck me, man. They've really dug in and they've done the best that they possibly could do. But the game was there for us to take. And again, it comes back to no killers. I said it last week. People, you're being harsh, it's Man City. I know my own team. And I know we're soft as fuck up here at times. We'll battle and battle and battle. But when it comes to being nasty bastards who revel in other people's misery, like Manchester United used to, like you need to enjoy the goals that you're scoring. You want to hurt the opposition. with us, we're fluffing it around. We're taking too many touches. And the biggest mistake we've made is we've slowed the game down. We're not a great football side in terms of technical ability. We're heavy metal football. And we stopped doing what actually got us to the dance, what got us in the Champions League. If you look at the slowness of our passes, my God, it's embarrassing in the second half. You're playing 10 men. The quickness of the ball is what stops them from getting the extra man back to tuck in.
But you know what, Brian? Look, this is an incredibly competitive league. This is why when Josh called it the Farmers League last time, I was a little bit like, what do you
Fucking
mean?
hell.
Yeah.
It's not. It's actually a very competitive league, and I feel like going down to 10 men against Fulham or going to 10 men against Liverpool, who didn't even look like they were in it the whole time. This is not one of those leagues where you get to switch off. And I think this is a new realm for Newcastle to understand game management when you're ahead, when you're the favourites, when you're at home. These things create different pressures.
This is where
and
Eddie Howe,
environments.
we're going to learn more about him as a manager, because expectation is a new thing for Eddie Howe. At Bournemouth, the expectation was try and stay up, mate. At Newcastle, it was try and stay up, mate. And now the expectation is you got to get top 6. I'm not saying he has to get Champions League football every season, because it is competitive and there are better, teams with more world-class players. Liverpool are one of them. But to gift an opportunity like this to us and for us to still fuck it up, for me, that ain't acceptable. And there's not a single player on this pitch today who should be feeling good. If we come off 1-1, you can't. Go on, you fucker. Oh, it's Almiron.
It's not a handball. I don't know why you should play
Mate, Almiron's a fucking bird-brained idiot, man. He's the dumbest footballer in the Premier League.
Why
He's
did
the
you do
thickest
that?
footballer
I
in the
thought
league.
Salah was in there.
But look, I think we sometimes just like oversimplify the league in a way. Yeah? This is you're going up a level as Newcastle, and as I said in the summer and the end of last season, it's really difficult to do.
Oh, what the fuck, man? Longstaff. Oh, my God. You've got 2 better footballers in front of you who've got a good fucking goals per game ratio, and you're sitting there having a shot from 25 yards straight at the keeper. Fucking hell, man.
And I think last year when we talked about squad depth for Newcastle, that's going to be a problem. As you see, Longstaff is on now, and you see the drop in quality, and you need at this point someone to come in with something that he doesn't. This is why I say, as much as I like Newcastle, they're not going to be able to do all the things they need to do to have a competitive season on all the fronts that they're in. It just requires more than you're aware of.
But I get it. But the point you were making is towards the end of the season, the tired legs will come in, and eventually we will have to rely on players who aren't on the level. We had our first choice starting 11 out today. There ain't a single excuse from this lot of why at 1-0 with a man sent off, we should not go on and win that game. Oh, fucking hell, man. It's fucking pathetic, man. It's actually pathetic.
But again, this is what I'm saying. Because we're looking
Grown
at
fucking
Newcastle
men.
as favourites, because we're looking at Liverpool and feeling like, where's Liverpool going to come in and dominate this? They're
We've
not.
allowed them
So
off
now
with it.
we're like, Newcastle are favourites. That's a different expectation to then go off and kill a game when they give it to you on a plate. And it's like, you got Trent on a yellow card, you get Van Dijk sent off, you go 1 behind. That's a different type of pressure.
And when we say about trying to suss teams out as well, I said after Chelsea drew with Liverpool on the opening day, I said, look, we never know, because in however many months, 8 months' time, we might be sitting there and saying, oh, we drew against the team that pushed City closest this season.
Yeah.
We don't know what Liverpool, Newcastle are playing right now, and you
You know what
say,
tells
okay,
you? You know what tells you though? Jurgen Klopp is looking like happy as a fucking pig in shit right now. He is delighted.
the teeth does do that though. I haven't done.
He's delighted, and I'm annoyed because I'm like, yeah, you fucking. Because if we were in their position, I'd be delighted, and I respect that. But you can't. We've gifted them this with bad finishing and just poor technical football. And again, if Almiron starts this next game, this is where you'll learn more about Eddie Howe. If Almiron gets a game starts the next match, I'm going to start thinking, what are you watching?
But do you have another
He
inverted
misses.
winger? That's like left-footed playing on the right-hand side.
So we've got
Lewis Hall.
We've got Lewis Hall as an option now.
Is he a winger?
We've got.
Yeah.
We can be.
He could
He
play
can
that.
play.
Okay,
yeah.
so
Liverpool
more
could
importantly,
play.
right? Fuck that. We've got Murphy, who's a right winger. We've got Gordon, who's a winger. We've got Bonds, who's a winger. We've got we've got other players like Joe Linton who can play on the wing.
Nah, you need to
Isak.
buy someone, man.
Isak could play on
Nah,
the
you need to sign someone.
Isak can play left wing, and we could play Callum Wilson in the middle. I don't care. I mean, let's be real. We can have any fucker out there and who's more technically gifted
No,
than
but
Almiron.
do you see how you then need to sign more players? So now we just identified you need someone who's going to play a deep lying playmaker who's going to make things happen. You need another left-sided forward. You need stuff. You need.
Yeah, and they
things.
know
You're
that.
not going to get
But
away with it.
FFP, because Man City have pulled the ladder up after fucking ruining football, God bless yous, they got away with murder, and now we can't do the same thing. So we're having to take our time.
I think other clubs, and if you look at Chelsea, have made very clever ways of trying to make that happen. I know that loophole is particularly closed, but again, loans that are going to go through next season is a way of doing it. You can't go to the Champions League, be in the league, and drop out of the Champions League before the last 16, so you're not even in Europe anymore, and then finish outside the top 4. That's a regression. So now you're there. You're going to have to be creative on how you get past this particular point.
I don't think that loophole. I don't think that loophole actually is yet closed.
Who does he think he is?
5 years.
Fucking
Yeah,
hell,
but I don't think it's changed yet. I think it
through.
takes another couple of months to come into effect, doesn't it?
It nearly went through. No, it comes in now.
It's in now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
five. It's
Right.
5 years is the maximum.
Because
you
this
can
is
do
the
it.
thing. I could imagine if I was a Newcastle fan, that would be making my blood boil when people are going, "You need this, and that." Because they're thinking, "We know. Everyone knows."
But
We
with
need-
respect,
the main reason
Newcastle-
Newcastle can't buy anyone. Oh, Darwin Núñez is in again.
Wow.
Oh my God.
So when we said that who in the top 6 is going to get sacked first,
Wait there. Darwin Núñez has scored. It's 2-1. This really just sums my fucking.
wow.
what an impact he's had
Fucking honestly.
coming off the bench.
So he starts next season.
and
Best
he
game.
just and
Do you know what's mad? I've been singing Darwin Núñez's praise on nearly every show. And he doesn't even get a game. Jurgen Klopp rolled the dice. This isn't Jurgen Klopp's genius. He was like, yeah, just fuck it.
Nunez has probably watches this as well, so you've probably given him the encouragement to go and get
He
those
definitely watches.
couple of goals today.
Yeah.
He hears what people say about him. Look,
I need this, Marvin. I need this. I said last week, we don't have enough killers in our team. They're not killers up there. Against Man City, it was brushed off as, oh, it's fine, it's Man City. And you know what? I thought, maybe I'm wrong. If there's ever an opportunity where you should win a game, it's the vast majority of it being played down to 10 men. These pussies at the back here, I'm sorry, that is fucking pathetic. Soft bitches.
Dan Burn has switched off.
Mate, Dan Burn's so switched off, he's in a fucking coma, man.
Dan Burn hasn't fared well against Nunez.
Honestly, that is painful. That is brutal. Oh my God, that's bad. That is horrible.
Again, just to give Liverpool some credit here, they've been 10 men. They've done very, very well. It's not about Newcastle's inability. It's about Liverpool doing very well.
Shut the fuck up, Josh. You're talking shit. Absolute shit. This motherfucker, honestly. I swear to God, right? This is about we don't have killers. We don't have mentality monsters, as they used to be called, ironically, against Jurgen Klopp. And we did well with no pressure last season. Very, very well, right?
That's a key.
But in the last two games, the pressure has been on. Can you hang with Man City? In the final third, time and time again, we look like, what are we going to do? We look terrified to make a mistake because it's such an important game. In this game, we've played the majority against 10 men. And we have shut the bed, slow rolling passes around, not playing with intensity. When we have chances through on goal, Barnes not passing to Callum Wilson when it was the most obvious thing to do. Almiron with another 10 fucking sitters, missed every time. This is exactly the problem we had against Man City. It's not a coincidence. The pressure was on today and we've absolutely bottled it.
So you think Newcastle are struggling to live up to the expectations that they've set themselves from this last
absolutely.
season?
Because this was a game where I thought we should win this today, and we've been embarrassed. It's not just that we've lost; we've been humiliated. And all right, Liverpool stayed with us, battled hard. Darwin Núñez, clinical coming on. I've got to give credit, right? And for a 10-man squad team, they've really ran their socks off today. So I take my hat off to Liverpool and say, you worked your balls off and you deserve this result. But those lads should be ashamed of this. Absolutely ashamed. I don't care if it's Liverpool. I don't give a fuck. For what they did last season and the levels they reached, this is about mentality. Because I know they can beat Liverpool. They've beaten better teams than Liverpool. Fuck me, man.
I think this is, and what the final point about building your team, you're going to have to do some interesting stuff with the finances to get the players that you need. If that means you've got to defer a loan and then pay for it for next year, but you cannot go into this season doing what you're doing without a creative player and with Almiron as your starting forward. It just doesn't, it's not the levels of what
the
we
reason
need.
for this is commercially, Mike Ashley, it was almost like he was trying to do the worst possible job. If you look at the amount of money we get from our kit deals, our sponsorships, remember Sports Direct all over the stadium? Not a penny for that. We could not have been running a worse way. So we're coming from like a standing start almost. So we're signing a deal with Adidas for next season, which will probably be 10 times what we used to earn.
Yep.
It's full time. I got to give credit to Darwin Núñez. This is his moment. And it's a moment that was given to him by his coach out of force, really. So I'm not even going to give Klopp that much credit when he's been getting the junk minutes the last 2 games. Darwin Núñez, you bought him. I don't understand why you don't play him. The kid has qualities, and he's shown them today. So, he deserves to start. I think Eddie Howe, this is his first humbling as Newcastle manager where he's had his pants down a bit. This is embarrassing game management. It's a lack of fast pressure in the second half. We were 1-0 up. You go in there, you kill the game. Gordon, credit to him, had a fucking great game. We have absolutely shut the bed here.
If you're Eddie Howe, are you going to the board now and saying, look, I don't care how you do it. If Todd Bowley and every other boardroom or director, owner of a club can work out some sort of way to get round FFP, you got to go and do it. Because you look at the way they signed Lewis Hall, it's a loan with the obligation to buy. It's only that because they can't buy him because of the books of FFP this year. If you're Eddie Howe, you're going to the board and saying you need to be doing that. You need to be finding some sort of loophole, some sort of way around it, because I'm ill-equipped to give you another top 4 challenge.
Mate,
you know what?
Maddison, us not getting Maddison and seeing how great he's playing is so painful.
That's the answer for today. But do you know what I find, is that like we talked about it's just getting it done, because you asked me last year about Man City have been fined for this many breaches, and wouldn't you feel like Arsenal should have been robbed now and they should have won the league? And I'm just like, I'm going to be honest, I want my team to win it however they can. Like this, the thing is, we understand the rules of FFP and we understand, but the guidelines is that as long you have to find an answer around those limitations to run your football club to win. It's not about just sitting there being like, oh, FFP, so we can't sign a creative midfielder and we're just going to wait till next year. You find an answer, you do a loan, you spread it out over 5 years, you reinvent the transfer wheel, just like Todd Bowley has done, or you just accept that you're not big club ready. That means you're still thinking like a small club and you're hoping by running around and working hard is going to be the only measure of you being success. So I just think they're dropping the ball and they've got a week and a half and they need to do something, because this is terrible.
Yeah.
I can massively sympathise with Newcastle in that situation, because I felt very hard done by at the time when Chelsea were going through its problems with obviously Roman Abramovich being sanctioned, and I felt that we weren't being given the help at times that we needed, and I think that you would think a bit like that if you were a Newcastle fan right now.
You know what I'm feeling? I'm looking at the signings though, and I'm going, okay, Lewis Hall, one for the future, Liverpool, one for the future. I can imagine them both playing either side, and in future it's going to look good. And we obviously we got Tonali, who really does look the part in the position he's in. And then, but right now, is Harvey Barnes the answer right now? Is Lewis Hall the answer right now? Is Livramento the answer right now? Because we need to fucking win games right now, right? And I know we're building for the future, and that's great. But I was thinking, like, when I say we haven't got enough killers, I'm thinking we're going to bring killers in who are going to be like Isak in front of goal or creating on a similar level as what Maddison has done for Spurs. If we had Maddison today, we win that game.
He is one for the here and now.
Absolutely. So you need that balance. And I think that in what we've bought out of those 4 players, I'm not sure, if we've got enough for the here and now, and if we've leveled up enough.
They improve you. They give you a 10-year view of your squad. Yeah, they do improve you in many, many ways. I think what it is that you just needed more. And either you're going to admit that you can't do more, or you're going to find a way to figure out how to get the rest of the things that you need. Because you genuinely won't make it through the season with that 11 being the only top players that you can bring in. You mentioned Jacob Murphy. There's no real world where he is an answer for anyone in the top 8, let alone in the top 6.
Do you know what the saddest thing is? I bet my house on it that he would have done better than Almiron today. Absolutely. He would have been better than Almiron.
The levels
Almiron is the dumbest footballer I've had to watch in many, many years. The guy, and he was helped by that last season at times where he was just hitting it and it was just going in. He wasn't thinking, similar to like Papi Cisse years ago for Newcastle. But when he thinks about anything, oh my God, it's just painful to know, like, you're paid so much money to be a good footballer and I have to sit and watch you do that when we're on the up right now. The fact that he started today was a real head scratcher. So this is the thing. Now we're going to start asking questions of Eddie Howe. Why are you starting a guy who is playing so badly in the last 3 games? Him getting on the ball, some Newcastle fans, they go, he's on the ball, he's trying. It's not enough, man. You need I watch elite level football enough. You need to have killers. That's what separates you.
Yeah, but I think now that Maximin is gone, Almiron is the only one that can try to do something a little bit tricky.
Imagine Almac.
Because if you've got Gordon and Barnes on both your wings, they're both just very direct, and they're not going to create something out of nothing. And I feel like you do need those different approaches to defences. So I just think it's just one of those sad things of, like, he didn't show up today. He missed a really good opportunity to do better. But I do think also it's like you've lost Maximin, and then you replace him with Harvey Barnes. They're completely different types of players. You do need someone that can do the tricky stuff. Someone can be a deep line playmaker who's going to make something happen out of nothing, especially in the Champions League, because hard work isn't going to be able to get you through some of those games.
I think Eddie Howe's got a hell of a job in rebuilding confidence after that, because we've been humiliated there. That is an embarrassment.
I think if it wasn't for the Aston Villa match, there'd be alarm bells going off and you'd be raising serious questions. I think that the fact of when you look at your performances so far, anyone can lose against Man City. Today's the one that hurt. But also, you did pump Aston Villa in the first day of the season, and we look at their performances.
The biggest mistake we made today, 1-0, man sent off, we thought we'd won. That's the biggest mistake we made. And that's Eddie Howe's fault. That's got to rest with. I love Eddie Howe, done amazing. But I hate the fact that you can't criticise people. Like Bruno Guimaraes, if he has a bad game, he's been amazing last season. So fucking what, man? I'm talking about today's game. Like, if we think we've won a game, your job as a manager at the half-time is to go, they're still a live dog then, mind you. You get them fucking out of you in the next 10 minutes, belt them.
Okay, so again, you say it's Eddie Howe's fault there, but we look at the fact that both of the goals you conceded did have defensive mistakes in there, yeah? Whether it be from Shah, I think, was the first one where it hit straight off him. Botman was the first one. And then obviously Dan Burn positionally at the second one.
The reason for that,
was the strongest of defence in the Premier League last season.
Think about it. We all seen how slow we were playing in that second half. There wasn't the urgency. Do you know when Eddie Howe's on the documentary going, come in here, get at them, run at them? That wasn't there in the second half. That's Eddie Howe's fault.
They were trying to do
That's
game
Eddie Howe's
management.
fault.
That's why. They were trying to do game management and slow the
game management. We're playing Liverpool, the best attack in the fucking league, practically.
That they would run them out of the game because just making them defend all the time. And that clearly just didn't work. But again, this is what I'm saying. These young developing managers, because Arteta makes these types of mistakes sometimes also, where like he does a shift and he just like the shift is not working, it's the wrong type of thing to do. Those mistakes are going to be in there. Just like, I think even Pep makes these types of mistakes sometimes where he just goes all out and changing a starting lineup for no reason and they lose or they don't win as convincing as they should do. It's just like, it's experience. He's going into a new realm of a top level of a manager. This is where we find out if he's going to make it or not. I feel like he's not. I think he'll struggle.
I might have too positive an outlook on things, but I do think when you look at the fact that both goals were defensive mistakes that came from the defence that were the second best in the league last season, I'd put the percentage of likeliness of that happening so low that I think I would err on the side of caution and go, look, let's see a bit more from you before we start jumping to conclusions.
You've also got to look at it, like I don't think it's all doom and gloom at all here. Newcastle have had probably the 3 hardest games out of anyone in the league right now. You've got 3 points out of it, fair enough, right? That feels like a loss, especially in the moment right now. And like it feels...
We lost 5 games last season. We've lost 2 out of 3. And we were winning, and at 1-0, we were winning for fuck knows how long against 10 men today. Like, that is a shambles, in my opinion, to take that today. Like, there is no... I'm not overreacting here. That is fucking shit. I wish I could go in that fucking locker room because I'd be fucking screaming at them, all of them. I'd absolutely raise the fucking roof. That is just not... you're forgetting where you are. It's Liverpool. Newcastle fans getting complacent. Look, man, we finished 4th last season. That's the level. Like, you've shown what you're capable of. Champions League hasn't even started. There is no reason for what I've just watched there. Like, it's fucking annoying, man.
Don't worry though, mate. Look, I think going forward, you've got Brighton in the next game, which is a difficult game, but I think winnable for you. I think your styles match up in a way that I think you can get a result there. And then you've got Brentford, Sheffield United, and Burnley. So those are all winnable games.
They're very winnable. It's if you're Eddie Howe, you have to sit down these players. You have to sit Almiron down and improve him. You have to say, why are you snatching at things when you've got half a fucking hour to take this shot? Why aren't you looking for the better pass? When you're Harvey Barnes and you've got one of the best goal scorers in the country across from you with a sitter, why are you... It's because we don't have killers, and you need to try and train them to be that. But there is so much needed to go into them. For these last two performances, the level of passing's dropped off. We'll see if Bruno's tweeting out after that. You see how aggressive he is to the fans now, because they've let everyone down today. That is big time shithousery. I'm really, man. Fucking hell. I bet you Liverpool fans are loving this.
I can confirm in the chat, Liverpool are loving.
Yeah.
They are loving
You
it.
fucking pricks. No, you know what? Like, I don't want to be one of those fans who doesn't take it and give credit. Like, Liverpool, they did brilliantly. And if anything, they've just shown us, mentally, they're there. They're switched on.
This is the thing, when we played them, they just felt like they had heart and they had a desire, which even more than our players, like they just wanted to win more than us. And I felt that today. You could see that from every single player. Trent Alexander-Arnold at the end there, celebrating getting a throw in the last minute.
Yeah.
You could see that the desire was there. And this is why, I don't think you should be too hard on yourselves. I think Liverpool just have that, I don't know, Klopp has done something to them where they do have just an absolute will to win at the moment. And they are playing very, very well. And they're underrated. And so, you've probably played two of your hardest games that you're going to get in this entire season.
But it's just
Sometimes a manager can go into a club and he can elevate the players to perform above the level they're at. And last season, I believe Eddie Howe had more or less all of them elevated above the level of what we'd either seen from them prior or what we was expecting of them. Now this season, maybe they're just performing at the level they're at and they're not going above it. And I think the only thing that you can do to maintain everyone performing above the level where they need to be is to keep adding players into that mix, keep making competition for places. You look at the Newcastle bench today, who did they really have that they could bring on to make an impact in the game? So I get that there's criticism on Eddie Howe there, but I would say that without the strength in depth, those are problems that you're going to come up against a few times this season.
Let's get this straight, right? People were saying that before the game about Liverpool. They didn't have the strength and depth. They didn't have the players coming off the bench. They weren't at it.
We knew Liverpool had more world-class players than us, though. That was
the
never
proof's in the pudding. They had a player come off the bench that scored 2 goals and changed the match, didn't they?
By the way, an £85 million player.
Yeah.
So he's pretty fucking good. And despite having, I think he deserves a lot more chances than what they've been giving him this season. I think he's proved today that he's a live dog and that they should keep him in the side now, because actually, I think that this was their most impressive game of the season, Liverpool. The fact that they managed to keep in the game, it's like a boxing. You're a boxer. It's sometimes you're on the receiving end of the beating, and you got to tuck up and take it for a while. And what they did is they waited until we punched ourselves out a bit and went bang, bang, knock.
I don't think Liverpool were good. I don't think I left feeling like actually next week I see if they do that again, they're going to blow this team away. What I think it came down to individual quality, because the ball came from Salah. For the second one, and it was just him sitting back and feeding through to that striker. And you're right, having a player of that level on the bench is a big difference. But the fundamental things that you needed, I don't think cost that much. And I think when we talk about how we're going to adjust the Newcastle squad, I don't think you're trying to get an £80 million player. You're not in that market of the top 3-4 teams. You're in the market where it's 40-50 million pounds for players. I think there are players available that you can find a way to make sure you can make it work. You're just going to have to. I think this is, and also I feel like when you're a good team, people play differently against you. So we're not just going to go up and just play. We're going to sit there and be like, actually, we're going to... They sat back and they made it so difficult for you, and you had no one to break them down, and they hit you on a counter-attack.
That's what I'm really pissed off about, is a 10-men side stayed in the game comfortably against us. We didn't really grind them down the way Manchester United did, when they had their Notts Forest were down to 10 men, it was wave after wave after wave, and it was inevitable. Even at 2-0, I'm texting my mate going, yeah, they're going to win. You know what I mean? It just felt inevitable, and with us, it didn't feel inevitable, because we don't have a Bruno Fernandes, we don't have a Mo Salah, we don't have that level of player, and that's fair enough. But we still had enough, in my opinion, and enough chances created from Miguel Almiron or Gordon's pass to Callum Wilson to put this game to bed. And that is mentally weak. And it's been that way against City as well. And people can be like, oh, City the best team. No, yeah, but you can see when a team mentally aren't at their best, and we weren't at our best in the last game, and there's no way we were at our best this game. We had 23 shots, 8 on target, and I'm pretty sure that everyone that isn't on target was Miguel Almiron. And only 60% possession against 40. So
another thing that might concern you, Gordon looked your most creative player. He comes off after 70 minutes. Almiron stays on the full 90.
Mate, that's an Eddie Howe thing right there.
Yeah.
What the fucking hell are you? When he came off, I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
He was the one player, including Isak, everyone in your team, that you looked
Just to
at
be
and you
clear,
went, if it's going to happen.
Scored the goal,
Yeah.
set Isak up for the red card. That would have put him through a goal. He was the person who created. Oh, I've got to sit and watch Jurgen Klopp do his fucking ballet dancing now. God.
Does it change how people feel about Liverpool this season coming up now?
I think it should.
This should, yeah.
I think it should.
You got to give him credit for this.
Yeah, and that's the key thing. Like again, people were writing them off pre-season. Not a lot of people had them in the top 4. In their top 4.
I don't think they've actually been great in their first 2 games.
Yeah.
The Schlabazai penalty was a fucking dive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But today they hung in there pretty well, and I know Mov's right, is like, you know, I don't think they were amazing, but they worked really hard, and that's kind of what I'm impressed by, is they showed that desire to stay in there.
They also showed the desire and strength to go and beat Man City 1-0 early on last season, and then it didn't go on and push on from there. So that's why I just feel like I never know with Liverpool. I could never say with any certainty they'll push on now.
I don't think this is a big moment. I think this is quality players and forced into a defensive formation to go on the counter-attack. And Newcastle not having the ammunition to break that down and them countering. I think it's just it's actually very, very simple, and actually probably worked in their favour that they had to just defend. Because if they were attacking, you see all the vulnerabilities of Trent would have been in place still. So
literally,
they won't do it again.
We were having chance after chance when it was 11v11. We might have had a better chance of winning at that point, because Trent's bombing forward, you're getting Gordon in behind. So yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up there then. Big love to everyone who watched, even if you were there just to take the piss out of me. Big love to the lads. Don't forget to follow them on social media. Check out Joey's channel. He's killing it with the Chelsea content. Check Marvin out on Twitter, but be nice to him. Come on.
Tell us how you truly feel.
Check out Josh. Josh has got a new channel at Josh Vest on YouTube. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Oh, that was brutal.
Man.